Hello, this is Dr. Paul Cottrell, and I'm recording this on May 28th. I'm going to be, in this recording, I'm going to be going over Cash Jordan, but also Democracy Now! And my take on what happened at the commencements. I was there. As an alumnus, you get a free ticket. So I was there, and during that week, there are alumni events that I participated in. So, I was in Cambridge during the week of the commencements. I was at the commencements. I saw firsthand what happened. There's certain things that the media doesn't play that I will tell you what happened. And then, my take. Now, let me just create a preface here before we play Democracy Now! Normally, what will happen during the commencement week? Family members, sometimes they fly from different countries. They all go to the campus, they're roaming around, they're taking pictures. The students pick up the regalia over at the coop, and they're trying it on, make sure they got the right size, and they go and take pictures all over the yard. This is like a tradition that's been going on for, at least in modern times, decades. But this community, open campus community with Harvard and Cambridge, that's been going on since the 1600s, 1636, right? So, this idea of the university open to the public, during the commencements has been a tradition for hundreds of years, all right? Now, in modern times, you go pick up your regalia and you take pictures during that whole week, all right? Some people do it for 3 days. Some people are there for the whole week. And they do, pre-commencement pictures, post-commencement pictures, during commencement pictures, right? Well, because of that encampment, they shut down the gates. They locked up the gates into the famous yards, right, that are at Harvard. Harvard's campus is pretty big, but there's that famous part of it, right? And you had to have an active student ID to get in. Okay, so I have an older student ID, right, because I'm already graduated from Harvard University. So my student ID is inactive, but I can still use the student ID to access the library system. So I could take out a book, right? Because I'm an alumnus, all right? So even alumnus couldn't get into the gate system. This is before commencements. This is like 2 days before. So it's during the alumni events that are in different buildings, but not in Harvard proper gating, okay? Because the center of Harvard is gated. The rest of Harvard is not gated, right? So old Harvard, right, is gated. So they shut down the gates days before, even during the encampment, they shut down the gates. All right. They never really reopened the gates once the encampment was disbanded. So the problem comes in is that you can't take pictures in the yard with your family, or the yard's not open to the community like it usually is during the commencement week because of the encampment. And that encampment was a very selfish situation. Now, remember, I've been saying things like God, country, and family, all right, as a backbone for society. If you lose those, you start having a society that's devolving. Now, during the shutdown of the campus with the gate system, they had security guards at each gate that had some of the main gates have a large gate and a small gate. Some of them don't, all right? But the areas that you could get through the gate, if you had an active student ID, they would not allow any friends or family members for that active student. The reason being is they were afraid that a re-encampment would start again or a re-protest would start again. So they shut that all down. All right. So to prevent another encampment or to prevent other protests to take place in the yard during the commencement week, it seemed prudent by the administration, the president of Harvard, to do this. The problem is that means that you can't take the traditional pictures pre-commencement in the yard with John Harvard and all the other famous buildings within Harvard, because that whole week you're watching them set up the whole commencement, which is pretty impressive what they do. I mean, the team at Harvard that does all the events and sets the tents up and sets the flags up and, you know, all the video equipment, the AV equipment, it's pretty impressive what they do. Plus the eating tents and all this stuff. So it's a big event, right? That starts weeks in advance in planning and in assembly, because it's not just the main theater area in the yard, but it's also all the other individual school tents, chairs, eating areas, because each school will break up and have their own call up for each graduate, right? So you have the main event, the main exercise, and then that breaks up into individual commencements, depending on the school, right? So here's another element where it's a self-centeredness, that a once-in-a-lifetime thing that family members and the students get to rejoice and take pictures and roam that yard for the last time, right? Because many of them won't come back to Harvard, at least as a student. They may come back as a visitor or as an alumnus, but you know, this is a very unique time where, you know, to capture those last footsteps within the yard, right, with the family members. So they stopped that because they blocked the gates. Family members could not be in the gate system until commencements. All right. Now they did have gatherings for by the Science Center. There is this like large patio beyond. It's a huge patio, right? And they're right in front of Annenberg Hall is some grass there between the Science Center and Annenberg Hall. So on the grass and on the patio, there were tables set up for family and the grad students to enjoy, but they couldn't be in the yard. It was outside the yard, right? Because you have the gate and then the Science Center area in Annenberg. And there's this kind of like walkway, overpass, right? And there's this, in the overpass, there's this road, you know, where cars are going underneath. So, you know, that's where I saw them congregating. Now they may have been, I ended up going to the campus on Tuesday. So I had an event on Tuesday. So I was on the campus Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then I came back to New York. Some people get there even during the weekend. So I missed the event on Sunday because I was doing events at the Harvard Club, you know, because there's other things that are going on at the different clubs in New York. So, but the point here is that because of that encampment, they changed the process of who is allowed into the yard during the commencements. Now, will they go back to the old way? Hopefully, because I think they're really taking something away from the student and from the family members that come to see the graduate, because they put that lockdown in the yard. It wasn't, that's not the right thing. That's not the right thing to do. Normally, you had these students coming in and they'd be taking pictures and all that, and the students could get into the yard and have pictures taken, but it wasn't like the same kind of feel of free flow, right? With the family members and just to take it all in slowly. It was too locked down. All right. I also saw a lot of other things. All right, now that's happening on Tuesday, Wednesday. All right, now Thursday is commencements, and you have to wake up super early, and you get a card, you get a ticket, and tells you what your gate is, and you line up. If you don't get there super early, you don't get a good seat. All right, so I had to wake up at like 4 in the morning to be 50 deep in at gate G3. Okay, so at gate G3, I'm 50 deep in the line, and they don't open up the gates until 6:45. So I'm waiting in line for over an hour, just to get a good seat. So I did get a good seat. I had a premier seat up on the steps of the of the library. If you get to the highest step, right, either slightly to the left or slightly to the right, because they have a walkway for the administration after the commencements to go into the library. So they rope that off. But slightly to the left or slightly to the right at the first step at the top, that's the best seat. All right, by one of the pillars so you can rest your back. All right, because it's concrete and you're there for many hours, and you can see straight into the commencements. You see everything. You see it all. All of it. The prior commencement, as an alumnus, I was in a seat in the back on the side of the library, and it was hard to see the actual stage or the podium. You could see it, but it was in a distance and you weren't high enough up to look down into it. So this year I was able to see all of it. All right. So I had a perfect view of this. There's not a better seat other than being a graduate, close up towards the podium. There's not a seat better than what I got. So I saw everything that happened. A lot of it they're not saying on the media. All right. So I'm gonna play Democracy Now. It's slanted towards the Palestinian side. Some of the thing I'll interject, but just to preface this, the crowd, which is primarily family members of the new grads. Many are alumnus, but primarily the crowd in the perimeter are family members. In the center are the graduates. Okay, they're sitting in the chairs in the lawn underneath the trees. Then you have the faculty members, and the board, and the president. You have the faculty members up on stage, sitting in the chairs behind the podium, facing the crowd. Okay. The parents, many of them, had Palestinian flags, little ones that looked like they were handed to them. I didn't see it being handed to them, but they all had the same flag, and it was as if they went to some vendor and bought them or something. I don't know. They were all the same. It was really strange. And there were several students, some from the college, some from the other schools. So some of them were undergrads, some of them were graduates, and they had the Arafat garb, the Arafat scarf. All right, but not too many. But and I didn't see any flags with the students, but they had stuff underneath their regalia, and very few as they were marching in. I'll give an example. I'll explain this in a second. As they were marching in, you didn't see any advertisements on their cap. Okay, because if you're an undergrad or a graduate student, but not a PhD, you're going to have the flat cap, right? PhD will have the soft cap, right? Well, on the flat cap, it's easy to paste something or paint something. I didn't see many people doing that when they were walking in. Now, how it works is that the staff comes in. I don't know. Did the staff walk in before or after? I think the staff walks in at near the end. So you have the PhD sitting, and then you have another school, like let's say the medical school or the law school or the education school, and so all these different schools are walking in. The bagpipes are playing, and it takes a good hour or so for that to happen. Then eventually the college starts to walk, but they walk based on their house where they're dorming. So it's based on the different houses. I think there are 12 houses, maybe 11. I don't know. There was one new one. So I think it's 12. So each house is coming in within the college to actually sit. Everyone that's walking, you don't see too much Arafat garb or Palestinian flag. You see a little bit of it, a little bit, very, very little. I don't remember seeing maybe one or two people with advertisements on their hat, on their cap, for the undergrad or for even let's say the master's degrees. Maybe one or two, three, something like that, out of almost 10,000 students. So, but then eventually what happens is that they brought in underneath their regalia some stuff, right? Flags, right? There was a couple Israeli supporting, most likely Jewish, students that had a full flag of Israel. All right. And someone paid, I don't know how much it cost. It must have been like 50 grand. I don't know. Someone paid for 2 planes to circle the yard continuously. All right. To have a Israeli flag and an American flag, behind, as a banner behind the plane. And then right after that, Jews Lives Matter banner flying. All right. This is before the helicopter from the local stations started recording the protest that starts to ensue when the conferring of the degrees take place. So let me step back. Remember what I said. This generation of 2024 at Harvard and at other schools are self-centered, right? And that they destroyed a sense of history with the family members during the commencements because of their behavior, and Harvard had to shut down the gate system, so that whole week of commencements couldn't be enjoyed by the students and their family members. Okay, so there was a self-centeredness there. But then they stand up right after. So the meeting is started by the marshal. He has this phrase, "I open up the meeting," right? And so then it starts. There's some people that speak. You have some speakers, right? That I think it was the valedictorian or whatever. We'll play it a little bit. And she, riles up the crowd. All right. After the speeches, the first speeches. Then there's a conferring the degree. You know, but before all this, there's the pledge of the, before all this is taking place. Once they, I think the marshal says, you know, opening up the meeting, and then I think it's the Star Spangled Banner, then it's the national anthem, and then the speeches start. Okay. One of the first speeches, I don't know if it's the first or the second one. I think it's the second one, where it's all in Latin. Okay. And then you have other speakers after that. So you have these speakers starting to rile up the crowd, right? Then you have conferring, where the students from each school stand up and the dean will say, these students, you know, meet the requirements of a master's in or an undergrad in blah 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 from the school, from the, you know, the different schools. And then the president would say something like, you know, I am president such and such, and I confer your degree, blah blah blah. You know, all right. So, but they do that for each of the schools. There's about 12 schools. All right. So it takes time to do all this. The moment they started the conferring process, most of the Harvard College and some of other graduates, all right, primarily from the Graduate School of Arts and Sciences, stood up. And at this time, they start having flags in their hand that they must have been carrying underneath their regalia, because it's a locked situation when they marched in, right? They don't move around, right? And then some of them start putting stuff on their, some printed out piece of paper, and they pasted it on their cap, because these people that were protesting primarily were undergrads. Some of them were graduate students. How do you know? The hood, right? So, because an undergrad doesn't have a hood, and the graduate students have a hood. And it wasn't the Ph.D. students that were doing this, because they have a different cap. So, but they stood up and they started circling around chanting, let them walk, let them walk. All right. What that means is that there were 13 students that were protesting with the encampment, disobeying university policy, and not willing to disband, and were belligerent, and they ended up not graduating. All right. So you had a student body, about 1,000 students, that were protesting because there were 13 that were kicked out, even though those 13 broke university rules. Let's say pre-2024, if there were students that just decided to put up a bunch of tents and, you know, protest about oil divestment or whatever, they would have been those tents would have been taken down almost immediately. That place is super secure. All right. So if you start doing something strange, the security, because Harvard has their own police force, and then you have the Cambridge police force. All right. So you have two levels of policing. The moment you do something that's either defacing, putting a banner or something on a building, or you're setting up something in the yard, that, you know, that you're breaking a rule, and they'll come and take it down. They didn't want to do that. So the university was afraid, right? So what happens, the students become emboldened, right? Even though the students were breaking the policy of the school, because you're not supposed to, you know, create a tenement house in the middle of the yard. That's against that is against the policy. Now, what happens is that now you have faculty and students going, we're doing civil disobedience, even though it was against the rules of the university. And to graduate, you know what? It's not just academic. It's also, you know, there's also a soft element to it. Did you follow the rules? Are you in good standing with the university? Are you, is there any some issue with disciplinary action, blah, 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 that isn't resolved? That whole package is what allows you to graduate. Not if you did a thesis, or if you, finished all the coursework. That's only a piece of it. There's this other piece, and that is, are you in good standing financially with the university? Are you in good standing, in terms of, rules and regulations, right? That's the package. And these students were breaking the Harvard code of conduct on campus. And so what happened was, you had faculty, when they decided to start doing the disbanding, this is about a week before commencements, they decided to negotiate and disband. There was an agreement from the faculty, from the schools and the deans of those schools, to allow for the students to have some sort of amnesty because of the encampment, and to allow for them to graduate. There's another group called the administration office that decided there were 13 students that needed disciplinary action. And so what happened, there was an infighting between the admissions office and the deans of the schools. And it went to the Harvard Corporation to make the final decision. And they decided that majority of the people that were in the encampment get amnesty based on the disbanding agreement. But the ones that were belligerent, the ones that were pushing the buttons, their graduation was not allowed, postponed. Who knows what's going to happen? It seems like they're on suspension for a year because of not following the code of conduct of the student. All right. So there was some disciplinary action. That's the context of this. So because those 13 weren't allowed to, quote, graduate or walk, you had 1,000 students during the conferring of the degree for the other 9,000 students, with their different respective schools, making a ruckus. Literally, what happened is that the moment they started conferring the degrees, where a dean of a school asks the president to accept these students when they stand up for their degree, this is the pinnacle of the education. It's the conferring of the degree. Yes, it's ceremonial, but you're in your regalia, and that's when the president bestows the actual degree on the student. All right? Now, they stand up, and they're supposed to be bestowed this honor. And it was 1,000 students that were self-centered that drowned out that ceremony for each of the schools. Not just one school, but for all the schools except the Harvard College. Because the Harvard College is the last one, because they're the undergrad. They're the last ones that are bestowed the honor. So once the dean of the Harvard College asked for conferring of the degrees, the students stand up, and it's all fucking quiet. But all the other schools, it was a ruckus. Another sign of a self-centered student body coming from the undergrad subset. So not only did they destroy the benefits of family members trying to enjoy that whole commencement week with their grad in the yard, taking pictures, enjoying the scenery, taking it all in, watching the setup which is pretty cool to watch the setup of the actual commencements with all the event staff. It's pretty cool to see the behind the scenes stuff. All right. and it's open to the public. And it was a nice day, right? It's a nice day throughout that week. All right. And they couldn't enjoy it. And then when it's actually commencements and their particular grad, let's say you had a son or a daughter or even a spouse or whatever, getting, let's say, a graduate degree, all right, from, let's say, I don't know, let's say HBS. Let's just say it was the business school. Let's say they were getting a master's, for an MBA, right? So they were getting it from HBS, the Harvard Business School. They're getting their MBA, all right? And the confirmation for your grad with his classmates in the school for HBS stands up. The dean of HBS asks for the president to confer the degree, and it's primarily the Harvard College 1,000 students circling around, screaming, let them walk, waving Palestinian flags and Arafat garb, and drowning out the actual conferring of those degrees for each school. This didn't happen just once. This happened like 11 times. And they just kept on circling, and they kept on circling. And then what happened was the police started realizing they couldn't control the situation. They started corralling them. They didn't use brute force. They just corralled them, and then they had to leave. Some of these students were ushered away from the theater area. That is what I saw. And that point of self-centered students from the class of 2024, primarily from the college, some of them are grad students from other schools, but primarily from the college, self-centered and destroyed the ambiance of graduation for other students and for their family members during the pre-events before commencements, and destroyed the conferring process for the other students. Now, what's going to happen is that when they start integrating into business, they start looking for jobs. These people, even if they are part of the 1,000 that circled, they're going to have a hard time getting a job. In addition, in the network, the alumni network, which is very vast, it's one of the most vast alumni networks in the world. All right, on top of these students integrating into the clubs, the Boston, the Harvard Club of Boston, or the Harvard Club of New York, or the Harvard Club of wherever, right? The two big ones are Boston and New York. All right. When that happens, you're going to have older grads from different classes, especially of conservative bent, pushing back and creating, projecting a negative light onto these 2024 grads that were part of it, especially if they were part of it. So you have these galas and you have these different events that you meet tons of people. I've met people that graduate from Harvard in the class of the 1960s, right? I've met people that graduated from Harvard recently. So you meet a spectrum of people. There's going to be this new grad of people that come in to the Harvard Club from 2024. And when you meet them at the galas, or you meet them during these events, there's going to be a conservative crowd that talks down to them because they were self-centered, and they won't know how to respond because they're used to being around people that say, you're doing a good thing. You're doing a good thing for Palestine. You're doing a good thing for the Muslims. You're doing a good thing to, show the man, how important you are. There's a self-centeredness in 2024. They took away the ambiance from the family. They took the ambiance of that week of commencements from the alumni. They took it away from other students that were graduating for that commencement. And there's going to be some retribution within the club, where the 2024 grads are going to be shunned upon. They're going to be a pariah. Trust me on this. Trust me on this. Same thing happened with Gay. She thought that she was, she'd be protected with the DEI, right, crowd, and that it was all, wokeism was going to protect her. What happened was the conservatives within the Harvard crowd, within the Harvard alumni, took her down. And it's the same thing the same thing's going to happen to these students that came from the 2024 crowd. They're self-centered, and there needs to be pushback. There needs to be a conservative pushback. So I was next to someone that was also conservative. He had his wife graduating from the School of Education for a master's degree in education. And, he's a conservative guy. His name's Michael. And, he was telling, it was surprising that two conservatives randomly get onto the steps of the library and watch the commencements, but because we were in a sea of liberals or ultra liberals, but he was seeing the same thing. There is a silent majority of conservatives that need to now start pushing back the wokeism. And the battleground, the first salvos, the Fort Sumter was actually during that commencement. That's my preface of this, of what I'm going to start playing. All right. And I'll interject other things that I saw that the media is not playing out. I saw this with my own eyes. I was there.
Goodman, more than 1,000 Harvard students walked out of their commencement yesterday to support 13 undergraduates who were barred from graduating after they participated in the Gaza Solidarity encampment in Harvard Yard. The students left in a long, slow procession as many chanted, "Let them walk," while others carried Palestinian flags.
It was slow, but they drowned out the conferring of the degrees of each of the schools. That's what they aren't telling you.
The students walked out of the graduation.
Now, right here. Now they have the larger flag of the Palestinian flags that they didn't have when they were walking in. That means that they were hiding it under their regalia. And then they have the smaller flags. There were like three sizes: the large flag, kind of a medium-sized flag, and then a little flyer flag that I saw that were in the crowd with the parents. Because this is not just a student problem. This is also within the parents. The parents are also siding with the Palestinian cause and Hamas, and the anti-Semitism on the campus was outrageous.
It was the People's Commencement ceremony to honor 13 undergrads denied their Harvard diplomas. Meanwhile, this is Harvard University senior.
To honor the 13 grads that couldn't graduate even though they broke the code of conduct. And the thing is that you got to be in good standing financially, academically, and socially. Okay, now notice. All right, I'm going to roll this back. Notice how many students here have the Arafat garb. Now this is indoors. All right, I'm rolling it back. This was the commencement outdoors while they were protesting during the conferring of the degrees for the different schools.
or by church to host a people's commencement ceremony to honor 13 undergrads denied their Harvard diplomas. Meanwhile, this is Harvard University's senior Shruti Kumar, who went off script as she gave the English commencement address, slamming Harvard.
So she had a commencement speech. I think how it works is that you submit it to the college or the university for kind of approval, but she also had another one underneath her regalia that she took out and started reading it. Another break of etiquette. See, it's not just self-centeredness. There's a breaking of etiquette. See, trust me on this. Trust me on this. Dr. Paul Cottrell doesn't get stuff wrong. All right? Trust me on this. Fort Sumter and the salvos between liberalism and conservatism happened on May 23rd. Yeah.
For denying the degrees. She read from notes that she pulled out of her graduation gown.
In the fall, my name and identity, alongside other Black and brown students at Harvard, was publicly targeted.
I'll let her talk all the way through, but I want to interject. There is, like, again, it's about the oppressors. Oh, I'm of a minority, and therefore they're attacking me. No, you wanted to take a stance on something that it most likely, as we project through time, your stance is not going to bode very well with with how history is going to roll out. All right. But they're trying to create this animosity between the oppressed and the oppressor. All right. She was being attacked because of her stance on a policy, not a color.
For many of us students of color, doxing left our jobs uncertain, our safety uncertain.
They don't care too much about their safety. They're more worried about their job prospects now. All right, because it's problematic for many of them. All right, but it's about them. It's about them, and it's not the realization that if you're going to stand for something, you got to make sure that you're willing to take the consequences. That's what a leader does. A leader realizes that there may be, benefits, but this thing can go terribly wrong too. A leader takes a moral path of conviction. That doesn't mean they're right or doesn't mean they're wrong either, but they take a moral path of conviction, right? But it may not pan out. But don't be a baby if it doesn't pan out, because leaders don't cry when things go wrong. So what they wanted to do, they wanted to be in a safe space to be able to, say that there are atrocities that are happening to the Palestinians, and that and many of them are saying that it was proper for what happened to Israel during October 7th. Not all of them are saying that, but some of them are, right? What she's saying on what exactly happened on October 7th, I don't know. But the point is that they wanted to protest and they wanted to be in a safe space, and they thought that there weren't going to be any consequences. This is part of the selfie generation. This is the part of the problem with the me generation. This is the problem with they're going to be banging their chest and screaming out loud, being civil disobedient. We'll hear that word later. Civil disobedient, but have no ramifications. See, this is the part of the problem with those 13. They felt as though socially there wouldn't be any ramifications of their bad behavior against the code of conduct with the student. That the student has to follow a certain code of conduct. It went against the code of conduct. They weren't in good standing with the university, so they couldn't graduate. what's the point of having rules if no one's going to follow them? And what's the point of being a leader if you're not willing to take the ramifications if things go wrong? This is a self-centered generation. They want a free pass to everything. They want a do-over if something goes wrong. They pick the wrong path. Now, the sad thing is they're stupid, all right? They're smart but stupid. They're intellectually, academically smart, but they're stupid in terms of like the real world, all right? And they were a vessel, an empty vessel, where you had faculty members programming them, saying, do your civil disobedience and turn this country into a socialistic hellhole.
This semester, our freedom of speech and our expressions of solidarity became punishable.
It's a public space, but you don't have the right to be disruptive, either in the classroom or in the library or in the yard. No one was preventing you from going into the Harvard Square, right? Which is technically off campus, but it is part of the campus because Harvard Corporation owns all that land. But you could go into the Harvard Square area, by Starbucks, or by, I don't know, the Harvard shop, right? Or by the Coop and protest whatever you want. I saw it all the time. Every Tuesday seemed like there was a protest against China with their relations with Tibet. No one was stopping you. You're free. You have a freedom of speech. You don't have a freedom of disruption. And there, what's happening is you got these professional instigators that end up getting tenure at Harvard and at these other universities that are telling their students about civil disobedience. But they're not telling you the other side of it. You can be civil disobedient to try to create change, social change, which their social change is socialism and communism, but to promote the social change. But they're not reminding them, you know what, if this thing blows up, it may hurt their careers. There may be a blowback. There may be ramifications. They don't have the right to set up North Face tents in the yard. It's actually against school policy. But the problem is you got a president of Harvard that doesn't have any balls to stop it.
Leaving our graduations uncertain. As I stand before you today, I must take a moment to recognize my peers. The 13 undergraduates
Now you got to remember. Now, of many, not just the college, but many of the other schools were applauding her. All right, and the crowd, because there were a lot of liberals there. All right, but the 13. All right, I thought some of them were graduates too, but the 13 undergrads. All right, they broke the school code of conduct. If you don't have a disciplined student body, how are they going to be good leaders, good decision makers? Because society has taken a long time to get to this point. You're not going to be able to unravel it so quickly because of what you read in a book or heard from a professor that's ultra liberal. And the thing is the crowd emboldens her. This is the point that I'm making with the selfie generation. They get this dopamine hit from this applause, just like they get a dopamine hit from, you know, likes on TikTok. Watch how she gets emboldened.
The 14 undergraduates in the class of 2024 who will not graduate today. I am deeply disappointed by the intolerance for freedom of speech and the right to civil disobedience on campus.
Putting up a Palestinian flag over John Harvard, where it's the American flag, is not civil disobedience. It's disrespecting of the American flag and of the country. It gets really simple, honey. God, country, and family. Not selfie generation, meism.
Over 1,500 students had petitioned. Nearly 500 student staff and faculty.
500 faculty and 1,500 students petitioned. There were thousands and thousands of students that were petitioning to take away the degree of Stephen Bannon because he was part of the Trump administration. I knew someone that was running the campaign. You have a lot of students that are fucking crazy at Harvard. They really believe we're going to write a petition and, you know, our say is what needs to be done. Meanwhile, what happens when you have a group of students, quote, in a democratic situation, trying to project something that's not really moral? Democracy can kill itself. That's why there's constitutional republics. That's why there is a code that you go by, where you have branches of government of equal power. Just because you do it a petition doesn't mean horse shit. But it is obvious there was a disrespect of the American flag. And in that yard, and on that stage that she's at, she's behind the actual church. Many of these buildings are paying homage to the soldiers that were lost during the Civil War, during World War I, and during World War II. And when you have a student body disrespecting the American flag, then that student body needs some discipline.
Spoken up, all overwhelmingly against the unprecedented sanctions. As an American and as a Harvard graduate, for me, what is happening on campus is about liberty. This is about civil rights and upholding democratic principles.
Constitutional republic, honey, not democratic principles. Whose liberty are you looking for? Your liberty or the liberty for the aggregate?
The students had spoken.
This is the emboldening that I'm talking about. This is the emboldening that I saw, that the crowd emboldening her, saying, just wait. It's about, we are saying something to society and to Harvard, and you need to listen.
Okay. Do you hear us?
With that selfish little brat look as she's saying, Harvard, do you hear us? What about the disrespecting of the flag? Which, where I come from, that's extremely disrespectful and intolerable.
That is Harvard University student Shruti Kumar. For more, we're joined by Allison Frank Johnson, professor of history.
I'm pretty sure that Shruti is not going to be getting a banking job in New York. Now watch how they pivot to one of the students that actually was prevented from graduating because he's not in good standing. All right. Now remember, just because you finish your schooling, all your coursework and your thesis and whatever, if you're not in financial good standing or administrative standing, not just academic, you can't graduate. But they want to pass. They want to pass because they want to promote an agenda. All right. First of all, a lot of people know how I stand on this. I think this is a biblical battle between Esau and Jacob. All right. And that Westphalian policy making isn't going to work. It hasn't worked for 3,000 years. It ain't going to work now. All right. And this is a different situation than the Vietnam era because the students, most of them don't have skin in the game. During the Vietnam, they could have been drafted into the war. Most of these students don't have skin in the game. Some of them do, either family members in the IDF or family members that are living in Gaza, right? But most of these students don't have skin in the game.
University on Monday, she joined 115 faculty members to vote to confer degrees on the 13 seniors. We're also joined by Asmer Saki, senior at Harvard College, majoring in social studies and ethnicity.
It's about projection. Now, Democracy Now! Has a lot of followers, right? This video has been seen by 361,000. It was 3 days ago. All right. Why isn't he in a suit? Why isn't he in a t-shirt with AirFat garb on? Step up to the plate. You're almost graduated from Harvard. It's time to start acting like a fucking adult. Discipline. These kids don't have discipline. This is why I'm starting to think, and my brother also thinks the same, that there needs to be mandatory military service for the youngins. One, to get them in shape because they're too fucking fat. Two, they don't have any fucking discipline.
Migration and rights. One of the 13 pro-Palestinian student protesters barred from graduating. He's a Rhodes Scholar. We welcome you both to Democracy Now! Asmer Saki,
He's a Rhodes Scholar. So what he is going to be protesting about must be looked at in high esteem because he's a Rhodes Scholar.
with you, I'd like to say congratulations on graduating, but you didn't get to participate.
He didn't graduate. See, this is the problem with liberals. And liberals are using the word democracy to turn it into a one-party system that is more like communism. Democracy now. It's communism now. He didn't graduate. Watch what he says.
at graduation in a formal way, though many might say what you did was so significant that is what's going to go down in history of this period. Can you talk about what happened and why you weren't part of the graduation in Harvard
You
Yard?
didn't graduate.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Amy. As part of my involvement with the Gaza Solidarity Campaign and the encampment itself, and generally my activism with the Palestine Solidarity Committee and the Harvard Out of Occupied Palestine Coalition on Harvard's campus, we've seen multiple ways of repression over the last few years. And this is, again, a problem that is not new. Particularly with regards to my involvement in the encampment itself, the university decided to put me on probation for about a year's time, so until May 17th of 2025, which essentially means that I'm a student and not in good standing and will not be allowed to get my degree, which essentially means that
He didn't graduate. That's what it means. So why couldn't Democracy Now! Journalists get the fucking facts straight? See, this is the problem with the liberals. They spin it in such a way. They use different terms. They use the wrong term. They project it wrong. So if you're not discerning, you think, well, they're just not letting him walk, and he graduated. No. He wasn't in good standing. He couldn't graduate. And, oh, by the way, he's the guy that was on the fucking bullhorn. So he talks really nice and soft. But when he was in the yard, guess what? He was on a bullhorn. And even with this incident, he was a rebel rouser even before this. Rhodes Scholar. You're a Rhodes Scholar? All right. Get a suit, get a nice club tie on, and look professional. And by the way, shave that beard.
the thing that I had planned for my postgraduate plans is something that now hangs in the balance and something that I can have no certainty over. But
do you get to keep your Rhodes Scholarship?
So as of now, my Rhodes Scholarship remains intact because people at Rhodes House have been incredibly supportive and believe that I am in fact fighting the world's fight. However,
another organization pushing liberal agendas to destroy constitutional republics. Another organization that is trying to wedge society into oppressors and the oppressed.
As a consequence of not getting my degree on time, there are chances that I might not be able to matriculate at Oxford on time next year.
Let me ask the professor. You are one of more than 100 professors who have signed on to a demand that these 13 students graduate, Professor Allison Frank Johnson. Can you talk about what's happened to him and the bigger issue, why you're a part of this movement?
Well, I want to acknowledge, first of all, that it's the students who are really leading the movement and the faculty are supporting students. So I'm here in support.
Listen, honey, these students didn't come out of the womb wearing airfat garb. They were open vessels from your rhetoric that caused this. And that's the problem that needs to be reconfigured over at Harvard. Too many liberal faculty members projecting their thought of the way the world should be onto impressionable students. Yes, granted, they're smart, but stupid in the real world.
The students rather than as a representative of a movement per se. What I wanted to do was to see the university recognize that these students have fulfilled all of the requirements for the degree, that they engaged in a peaceful protest, that the punishments that were meted out to them were not in keeping with years, decades of press.
They broke the code of conduct. In addition, he supported putting up a Palestinian flag over John Harvard where it's the place of an American flag. That is disrespecting not just of American citizens and disrespecting the country, but all of the service members that have walked that yard and lost their lives for protecting our country. That's what happened. She doesn't give a shit about that.
At Harvard University, where peaceful protest is understood to be a part of the learning process, one of the ways that students act out what we are teaching them about civil
disobedience, how to act out. But self-centeredness now, civil disobedience, it turns self-centeredness, destroying the whole graduation week for the students and for their family members by locking down the campus and not enjoying pre-commencement activities in the yard. His activities prevented people that flew in, let's say, from Asia to see their grad pre-commencement, doing the photographs, pre-commencement photographs, walking the yard, sitting, in the chairs and taking it in. He prevented that. Her peaceful protesting prevented that. The self-centeredness prevented that. And then the conferring of the degrees for all the schools except the Harvard College, drowning it all out because of their chants of, Palestinian is so great and let them walk. It wasn't peaceful. It was disruptive. And not only was it disruptive, it was self-centered. No one stopped them from protesting peacefully in the Harvard Square. Why did they have to do it in the Harvard yard? Because it was a safe space.
Obedience about how to enact change, about how to move society forward, about how to encourage people to think about things that they would rather shut out of their minds. And having taken those lessons that they learn in our classrooms and applied them through taking up their right to peacefully protest in the yard, which is in fact enshrined in the university statement on rights and responsibilities, that right to protest.
You don't have a right to set up a camp in the yard. That's not a right. That's actually against the student conduct. And defacing John Harvard isn't allowed also. And putting up a Palestinian flag in place of an American flag, where the American flag normally is, isn't acceptable. It's amazing. It's amazing. What's happening with this selfie generation? They think they're fighting the good cause. All right, and that's fine. They can have a different opinion than I on this order. I think Israel should radically take land away. All right, that's my opinion. I'm an American. I can say whatever the hell I want. All right, but these others could say and believe whatever they want. No one's telling them not to believe what they're wanting. Right? But the problem comes in is when their actions are disrupting other people's enjoyment of the activities for the graduation. Because not all the students believe in what they're saying. Not all the family members believe in what they're saying. And then there's this element of the disrespect of the American flag, the disrespect of the soldiers that lost their lives, that are on the buildings in the yard, for a memorial. It's just The way I see this is that you have liberal professors promoting agendas that are very similar to a Mao revolution kind of thing. There's a cultural revolution that's taking place on the campus. And this is why I keep on saying the conservatives need to step up to the plate and start to check them. And what I mean by that is that you start hearing this, you start peacefully saying you're wrong, and this is why. All right? And they don't have a right to, move up society. It's not their right. They need to be a pariah. That's him on the bullhorn.
In ways that we thought were inappropriate for Harvard College. And having pursued multiple avenues to try to encourage authorities within the university to understand that from the students' perspective and from our perspective, this was an egregious departure from past precedent. We found ourselves in the unusual situation of being told that 13 students weren't going to graduate anyway. And so we looked very carefully at
They don't understand that their actions have a downstream effect negatively on others. Maybe they didn't realize that because they're self-centered. Many people that are self-centered don't realize their actions and how it affects others. So that's not totally out of the realm of possibility. But I'll tell you, these people, they're pushing a socialistic agenda. Trust me on this. I literally saw communist posters, small leaflet type posters put on the wall within Seaver, or on the columns when you walk through a gate. There's people can put flyers up. There's communism in Harvard.
rights within the university
roll it back
statutes and determined that as a faculty, we actually face that right to protest, that they were being punished in ways that we thought were inappropriate for Harvard College. And having pursued multiple avenues to try to encourage authorities within the university to understand that from the students' perspective and from our perspective, this was an egregious departure from past precedent. We found ourselves in the unusual situation of being told that 13 students weren't going to graduate anyway. And so we looked very carefully at our rights within the university statutes and determined that as a faculty, we actually have the right to present a motion to, an amendment to the motion through which we decide which degrees to confer and adding those students' names back in. And that amendment received overwhelming support at the degree conferral meeting of the Faculty of Arts and Sciences. And so we hoped then that the corporation, as it has always done in the past, would accept our recommendations for degree recipients.
See what happened there? They made a decision not to have them graduate. The faculty got upset. They, through their rights, tried to amend it as a proposal to a body, which is the Harvard Corporation, and the Harvard Corporation decided they're not going to do it, even though many times they do. See, what it is that you have people that are pushing a liberal agenda that trying to use game the system and precedents to get what they want. But then when they don't get what they want under the proper rules and regulations, because the Harvard Corporation decide to agree or disagree with the amendment, they have a shit fit. See, this you're seeing it even in politics in the United States today, where, like, for example, in 2016, when Trump won, all right, he was running against Hillary. Couldn't have been the people wanting Trump. Must have been some sort of Russian conspiracy. They're always blaming someone for their failure when the system says, we don't want you, or we don't agree with you. And she's trying to demonize the system that she was trying to hijack.
Which they chose not to do.
And it's their right. And the thing is that, she's smart enough. She's smart enough to realize that she should have had comma, and that's their right. Period. We had an amendment from the faculty, from FAS, sent to the Harvard Corporation, and it's their right, the Harvard Corporation's right, to disagree with the amendment, which is what happened.
Through graduation, then walked out to the people's commencement with so many other hundreds of students. Would you do this again, by the way? Would you, the events that led to your being prevented at this point from getting a diploma?
Absolutely. I think, if anything, all the protesters at the Gaza Solidarity Encampment were aware of the fact that consequences and retribution on some kind of level would be imminent, regardless of what level of involvement individuals partook in when it came to the encampment itself. And I think what's important to realize here is that no one did not see some.
If there is consequences, and and you continue to do it, you got to live up to those consequences and stop whining about it. So what if he waits until 2025? It's not that big of a deal. It's not that big of a deal.
Consequences coming our way, just the unprecedented level and the severity of which they've been enacted, were sort of surprising for us. But at the same time, I think, again, this is an ethical stance that we're taking. It's not something that is, marred by circumstance, or if one time something doesn't work out, students will, suddenly back down, or if, one-time consequences are lashed out in a very severe fashion, students will refuse to engage in protest action. I think.
Think about it this way. When 2020 was going on, I think it was like February, all right? And the Crimson was trying to, discredit me, turn me into some sort of Alex Jones, conspiracy theorist, saying that there was a big problem coming. And I told them that they were going to be shutting down the university. And oh, by the way, everything I said happened. All right. And they were trying to demonize me. And then they tried to kick me out in July. Where were the fucking students there back in trying to save humanity? Where were they? But they'll worry about what's going on in Gaza. And they can't even get the number straight with the body count. It's way lower.
That we have consistently seen on Harvard's campus and beyond is the fact that regardless of the severity of punishment, whether that's at Columbia, at Northeastern, at Emerson, at Northwestern recently, or at Harvard's campus itself, these things keep popping back up. And it's because of a firm ethical resolve that students have been able to determine for themselves, and have led by example through for the rest of the country to be able to witness, and that these consequences,
they're happening because they're being funded by organizations. And two, you are an empty vessel being programmed by a bunch of social communist professors. These professors that are pushing for the quote, civil disobedience, they don't want Israel. Oh, by the way, they're promoting reparations too. So if you're a white dude or a white girl, they want to take money away from you. Oh, that's coming. Trust me, it's coming. Because they've already set up the committees in New York to look into the recommendations for the reparations.
Are only exposing the rot that is, imminent to all of these different institutions and the ways in which they are sort of beholden to corporations, to donor pressure, to outside pressure. as opposed to listening to the very sort of rightful demands of their own students and faculty and members of staff that they have been championing for ages at that.
A student doesn't have the right to tell the university how to invest its money. The student doesn't really have a right. I mean, they can say, but let's say the university says, we don't care what you have to say. That doesn't mean that you continue protesting. You have a right to say something, but you don't have the right to dictate what the other person wants to do. And so what happens is you have these faculty members that just keep on pushing these students, keep on protesting, keep on protesting, keep on protesting, keep on protesting, do it peacefully, keep on protesting. Then you get the agitators in and it can get out of control. But keep on protesting. They want to move this country where it's a one-party system or a two-party system where it's basically the same party. And we're moving towards that. And, high taxes, high inflation, demonize people that are successful, or demonize, Western countries, or demonize certain ethnicities, and try to, take money from them or take land from them. Right? Now, this whole Palestinian thing is biblical. And if they're a professor and they don't fully understand this 3,000-year arc of conflict in that area and how the homeostasis has already been written in biblical texts, right, where this has to go to reach homeostasis, then they're not knowledgeable enough on the subject to even have a protest. A liberal mindset, because think about it, rebooting the temple means that the end of liberalism is happening. The idea of your actions through self-centeredness don't have some sort of punishment for ends, because it's a realization that our actions affect things, not only on this plane, but on a spiritual plane. The people will become blessed, but there's going to be this kicking and screaming of these people that don't want God in their life, that don't want, affinity to country, that don't want, a strong family unit. Because what's happening with these liberals is that they want their abortion. They don't want to have families. They don't want to have a strong affinity to country. They think it's okay to be just some sort of digital nomad. And they don't want affinity to God.
At this point, and again, the call for divestment is not new. Yes, it might have gotten newfound popularity in the last few months given the events and the genocide in Gaza, but at the same time, divestment has been called for years on Harvard's campus alone, and has always been met with repercussions. The fact that the movement keeps from.
Why don't they say, you know what? No more money from Dubai, no more money from the Middle Eastern countries. They don't say that. They just want to see what it is they assume that climate change is caused by fossil fuel use. So you have to divest from fossil fuel. And you should be divesting. Why are these students telling the school how to invest? If they don't like it, don't go to the school. Go to a school that doesn't invest in those, that are more SRI related, socially responsible investing. All right? The realization is socially responsible investing has a tendency to have lower returns than investing in the market. And guess what? In the market, there's some bad players. There are people that are part of the weapons, the weapons industry. All right. If you don't like the university's things, don't go to the university. But why do you feel as though it is your right and privilege to dictate to a school, in this case, the Harvard Corporation, all right, how to invest? It's not their right. They have the right to say it. They have a right to force the issue. I wonder, how did the Rhodes Scholar? I don't know the answer to this, and people are listening. Hopefully, you will chime in. I'd be curious, and where the money come from the Rhodes Scholarship, and I'm willing to bet that somehow, some way, some of that money would have been in a similar vein that they're complaining about with the Harvard Corporation. Maybe the money came from weapons, maybe the money came from slavery, maybe the money came from energy, something. Some sort of atrocity with some people.
Back up is sort of emblematic of the resolve of students. And I think if I were in that position again, would gladly take that same step.
And Professor Johnson, in Harvard Crimson, government professor Stephen Levitsky is quoted as saying, there is a potential for a faculty rebellion against the Harvard Corporation's decision to not allow these 13 students to graduate. Do you view this as a possibility?
Well, I think the level of frustration is so high that faculty are ready to do what they can. I have to be honest that I'm not sure what the statutes allow us to do as far as rebelling against the corporation. I think this is one of the problems we see in many democracies is there are all sorts of rules that suggest that people have power, but then include exceptions which allow some authoritarian body to actually overrule their voice. And the corporation's refusal to accept our recommendation for degree conferral is an example of them acting within rights that they have. So it's not clear to me how we can practically rebel against this body that seems to be able at will to disregard our pleas and our decisions. But certainly the lack of confidence couldn't be greater, I believe, in the corporation. And to the extent that faculty can express their displeasure with the corporation, I think we are very much willing to do that.
And finally, I want to give the last word to Asma Safi. You have the previous Harvard president, Claudine Gay, ultimately pushed out. Ultimately, it was over this issue when she was questioned in Congress. I'm wondering your message, not only to the Harvard administration and what they call the corporation, but to the Biden administration.
I mean, it's very, very simple. As an individual that is, a taxpayer in this country, as someone that studies here, lives here, it is absolutely important that we are abetting and aiding genocide in every sense of the way, enabling it, not recognizing calls that are being made under the purview of our free speech and First Amendment rights. And I think the Biden administration, with all its sort of, me as a student, I am aspiring for an ideal in a world that I can live in, where the government is somehow sort of like liable to the things that we have to say here. And I think despite its constant failure, the Biden government needs to necessarily hear the fact that students across the country are calling for one particular thing and showing up in the same way and showing up over and over again. And if university administrators and institutions and corporations cannot be able to listen to that kind of message, it should be at least clear, even if they choose to ignore it, choose to falsify it, choose to meet it with repression, the claim that students stand with Palestine, students stand with Gaza, students stand against genocide, against warfare, against arming countries, and against materially aiding any sort of conflict that has a loss of human life central to how it sort of goes on. And I think for me as a student, for someone that has had my faith in both the university administration, but also the US government at large, be completely shaken as a consequence of the actions that I've seen at Harvard and beyond, with my peers being met with police repression on campuses across the country. I genuinely lack faith in the ways in which these systems work. And for me as a student right now and my peers, the goal is to reimagine the world that we live in and sort of be able to construct it from down below. just so we can be able to aspire to the future of the world that we want to live in.
Marsapi.
Social engineering. That's what is happening. You have students out there that want to reimagine the world, be disruptive. You know the term disruptive? You know, especially in these startups, it means that they have an idea, right? And they want to break the old so they get funding for their idea. So it's disruptive, right? Same thing. They want to create a disruption in society. Now, guess what? When the temple gets rebuilt, that is actually showing a huge sign to the liberals that your certain types of policies that are egoistic and going against biblical precepts, depending on, you know, it doesn't matter what religion you follow, all right? But there are some moralities that most liberals don't follow, all right? There's some moralities that religion sets, that this is the code of conduct, and that these people, these liberals, are going to be kicking and screaming because they don't want that. And this is why you're seeing such a blowback from the ultra-liberal movement on what's this march towards the actual rebuilding of the temple. Now, when it gets rebuilt, I don't know. But we're definitely in times where we're setting the foundation for it, right? And it's been stated thousands of years that the borders for Israel be such and such. That means it doesn't matter what he thinks. It doesn't matter what I think. It doesn't even matter what you think. It's what God thinks. Now, people would say, well, you know, God doesn't exist, blah, 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 blah. Good luck with that one. Good luck with that one.
Thank you for being with us. Senior at Harvard College, one of 13 pro-Palestinian student protesters barred from graduating yesterday, and Allison Frank Johnson.
Okay, so that's my take on what happened with Harvard, all right? He should have been dressed in a suit, looking professional. He talked proper, right? He didn't go crazy. But why promote the Arafat garb? Remember what the Arafat garb is? It's the destruction of Israel. What they want, what the Palestinians want, is broad support in the international community of statehood, which would mean that it tries to block the rebuilding of the temple. Now, you really want to go against 3,000 years of written down what it's going to be, how it's going to play out. You really want to go against that? It doesn't make sense if you really are a good roulette player, right? You know, there's probabilities. If you really want to use the probability going against biblical prophecy on how this is all going to play out, because I swear, when you watch the news, you can see that there's some sort of divine hand coming in on this, right? And again, Israel's getting cursed and blessed. The United States is getting cursed and blessed. I've done many videos about this. People in general are getting cursed and blessed. This idea of this liberalism, we're starting to see, if we let liberalism take hold, all right, and the students that don't have that much experience in the real world, trying to dictate the world and what it really is, through wokeism and all that, is going to be another crack in our civilization where it'll lead to the downfall. And, you know, America is the Roman Empire, but Rome fell too because of internal strife and decadence. And people like her promote that decadence and that internal strife. Now, what I want to do is I want to go to Cash Jordan, because I said that he did another video here.
For this, I will continue.
No, before I go to Cash Jordan, please make sure you subscribe to all of my channels. I have 4 YouTube channels. Link is in the description of this video. Also subscribe to my Rumble, Bitchute, and Brighteon. Why? Well, some people get unsubscribed, I should say, unsubscribed, and people aren't getting notifications. So make sure you subscribe to everything so you get some sort of notification that it's somewhere. All right. In addition, please follow me on X, GETTR, and Facebook. All right. Please follow me on Patreon. That will help support my news coverage. You can purchase a membership, a basic membership, which is basically helping to support my work, because most of my videos are for free for everybody. And in addition, at the higher tier level, you'll get special access to the videos, some of the video lectures that I do in pulmonology, and later to release the immunology. You can also, again, go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the health supplements that I offer. I have a lot of really good products. Now, people have been paying attention to me. The protocol is basically structural nanosilver liquids, which is max 35. You get C60, turmeric, ashwagandha, and digestive enzymes. All right. And then you want to also add D3, lignans, and omega-3. Okay. That's basically the protocol. What does it do? It helps to improve your immune system. It helps to slow down the aging process, but it'll also neutralize pathogens, bring down that reactive oxygen species. It has the digestive enzyme complex, has proteolytic and fibrinolytic enzymes. What that basically means, it'll help to break up clots, and it will also break up glycoproteins. All right. Now, if you've been following me, I've been saying this for 4 years, way before Dr. McCall, way before. Dr. McCall's protocol is not as robust as mine. Mine's more expensive. Dr. McCall's protocol is like getting, I don't know, a Kia. All right? Buying a Kia. But if you want to buy a Ferrari that has a lot of other capability, right? Top of the line, high quality, and does a lot more than what his protocol does, then you better start following mine, because mine is way better than his, 100%. Because he has the proteolytic enzymes. He's also has the anti-inflammatory capability, right? And then clot breaking, which is the nanokinase. So he's using nanokinase and turmeric, right? And he's using digestive enzymes to break up the glycoprotein. Well, if you've been listening to me, my stuff does the same thing. And I said this in 2020. He said it in 2023. All right? And mine does a lot more. So, like omega-3 brings down the LDL and prevents the stickiness of the red blood cells. The digestive enzyme complex will help to break up clots. The digestive enzyme helps to break glycoproteins. The same freaking compound that he's using, except I have a lot more stuff in it. All right. Structural nanosilver liquids neutralizes pathogens. C60 brings down that reactive oxygen species and helps to boost up the health of the mitochondria, which also will help to boost up your immune system. Taking lignans helps to boost up your immune system. My protocol is a lot more robust. It's more expensive, but it's a Ferrari. Trust me on this. Dr. McCall's protocol is buying a Kia. What do you want to do? Do you want something that will give you a lot more benefit? It's up to you. So go to my store, bud-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the structural nanosilver like max 14 or max 35. Take a teaspoon of this today a day. If you're not feeling well, take a tablespoon of it a day or two. And you swish it in your mouth for about 20 seconds, gargle with it for 20 seconds, swallow. All right, take it every day. All right, neutralizes pathogens, improves oral hygiene. Structural nanosilver gel. It will neutralize pathogens. It stays active for 5 hours, more than 5 hours actually. And you put it on your hand, right? You can put it around your face and around your nose, lightly coat your nostrils, around your eyes, around your ears. Neutralize pathogens. In addition, it helps to heal wounds. So if you have a cut, put it on the cut. If you have a minor burn, put it on the minor burn. If you have an abrasion, put it on the abrasion. If you have acne, put it on the acne. If you can also use it as a skincare. Like for example, after shaving for guys, your skin might feel a little irritated. Put the gel, lightly coat the gel on where you shaved, and it will soothe that feeling and help heal that razor burn. In addition, if you put it on your body every day and exfoliate at night, and you exfoliate in the morning, you'll notice that your skin is tighter and clearer. Okay. Dr. McCall's protocol doesn't do that. D3, it's a gene expression cofactor, really important for apoptosis for infected cells. In addition, it helps with absorbing calcium. C60, very strong antioxidant. I have it in a 2 ounce, a 4 ounce, and an 8 ounce configuration. You take a teaspoon of this a day, and what's going to happen is it's going to neutralize free radicals and boost up the health of your mitochondria, and you'll have more ATP. Slow down the aging process and boost up your immune system. Dr. McCall's protocol doesn't do that. You can get it in a coconut, avocado, or extra virgin olive oil. You can also get the structural nanosilver liquid that I offer. This is in a 30 ppm. The max 14 is a 14 ppm. This is in a 30 ppm, and I have max 35, which is 35 ppm. Turmeric, anti-inflammatory. Bring down those pro-inflammatory cytokines. Mix it with ashwagandha, which helps control blood glucose levels, bring down that inflammatory response, help with cardiovascular disease. Turmeric and ashwagandha helps with cardiovascular disease, brings down that inflammation, reducing the blood clot formation, and it helps to boost up your immune system. Way better than Dr. McCall's protocol. Multivitamin. You need a good multivitamin that's easy to digest. This is very easy to digest, and it has the multivitamins that you need as cofactors for proper cellular metabolism. If you don't have the proper multivitamins, you're going to have subpar cellular efficiency. All right, let's play Cash Jordan.
Migrants to sanctuary cities across the United States of America. They're going to New York, trust me.
So this could be a huge problem because, as you can see from the lines behind me, thousands are still arriving here in New York City every single week. Yet local residents are pressuring the city to shut down several shelters that they say are inhumane, which means if Texas makes good on this threat, the next folks to arrive will have nowhere to stay but on the street.
From the outset, community groups did not like the idea of usurping 8 acres of ball fields for a 3,000-bed migrant shelter.
It has not gone away. We're still dealing with this every day.
As the migrant crisis continues, New York City leaders will not stop evictions for adult migrants who've reached the 30 or 60-day shelter limit.
A shelter system in New York City was created to stabilize people. This rule does exactly the opposite.
The 30 and 60-day shelter eviction rules are some of the cruelest policy.
People say it's inhumane to put people out during the wintertime. So now they say it's inhumane to do it in the summertime.
Since the spring of 2022, more than 194,000 migrants have received care in New York.
Now, after months of what one group calls violence, fights, and reports of illegal activity, the Randall's Island Park Alliance says it's time for the city to fold its tents, remove the cots, and hit the road.
When you see some of the hypocrisy of people who are saying, bring us, you're tired, you're weak, your huddle masses yearning to be free, but not on my block.
Spectrum Internet offers the fastest speeds in more neighborhoods than any other provider. With Spectrum Internet, you can power all of your devices with the most.
So the Texas governor has vowed to send more asylum seekers to New York while calling everyone here a bunch of hypocrites. But what nobody's talking about is that Mayor Adams recently said the exact same thing, also referring to New Yorkers as hypocrites for protesting some of his shelters, saying that the shelters contribute to violence, that they occupy public resources, and that they are bad for the neighborhoods they're in. But at a recent press conference, the mayor just laughed it all off. And what else is he supposed to do? Just a couple of weeks ago when the city tried to repeal its right to shelter requirements or modify them so that they wouldn't have to provide an unlimited number of people with temporary shelter, activists got upset. There were rallies, there were protests, there were accusations that the mayor and his administration were cruel and heartless and had no humanity in their souls, even though the city doesn't have the resources.
See, with the liberal policy, it's choking society's productivity, its tax base, its ability to fund programs for kids and for, construction, road rebuilding, bridge rebuilding. And these liberal policies by these organizations promoting this mass migration into the United States from South America. And oh, by the way, there are 30,000, recently, Chinese that came over the border. Chinese, would they swim? No, what they did was they took a plane to South America or Central America and then did the trek, because they found that it's easier to get in the United States than to actually do it the right way. Liberal policies are destroying country. Now, what makes a country strong? Country is strong by having a growing population, having a law-abiding population, having a control of its currency, and having a control of its borders.
House the entire world, which is impossible. Yet activists were insistent on the right to shelter applying to everyone, which forced the city to start kicking people out of its shelters after 30 days just so new asylum seekers could move in, which is something else activists are upset about. They want the shelters to be permanent forever. But since that's not possible, the shelter system is now a revolving door operation, leading many people to question whether or not the asylum crisis is helping the very asylum seekers.
To destroy American cities. They can't afford it. And if you cut the supply, then the demand to coming up here will diminish. It's only when you keep on supporting this crap where they'll keep on coming. But if they start, if the programs for them, the handouts diminish, then they're not going to be here. They'll start to just wither away. Now, there is this big push for, we need to control the voting block, so let's make them legal citizens and we'll get them to vote for a Democrat. So turn states that were red states into blue states. But the red states said, okay, let's just send them all to the blue state. And the blue states are having a shit fit because they already are burdened with all their social programs. They can't afford this.
Stuck stuck in it. And that brings us to the real reason why we have an asylum crisis in this city to begin with. And it's because every single time city leaders try to care for the people everybody says we want to care for, they get blocked, stopped, fought against, which is shocking because polling consistently shows that 80% of New Yorkers are in favor of right to shelter. But the Texas governor is going to put that to the test, which means we're going to find out pretty soon where the city stands on this.
I'm against right to shelter. I'm against it because what's happening is that it's being taken advantage of and it's breaking the system. And this is the problem with people that want to, quote, change the world. Social engineers that want to change the world and not understanding the pernicious downstream effects that they cause. And a lot of times, because they're self-centered, they don't even care.
I will continue to bust those.
Before we go to Governor Abbott, please go to my store, blood-studio-reykjavik.com, and those liquid structural nanosilver products like Max 35, Max 14, put it in this applicator, and you can carry it in a bag. So with this applicator set, you get a nasal spray, a dropper, and a spritzer. So you can spray in the back of your throat or spray surfaces to neutralize pathogens, spray in your nose. Excuse me. Everything is live on my channel. All right. And then a dropper. So get the applicator and it'll allow you to carry the structural nanosilver liquid in your bag. The-studio-reykjavik.com. Boy, I do commercials. I do great commercials, don't I? Also, on my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, that link is in the description of this video. Resveratrol. All right? Take resveratrol. It's part of the anti-aging protocol. It will get rid of senescent cells. So I take this every day. All right? Some people don't like taking resveratrol. I've been taking resveratrol for decades. All right? So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get this high quality resveratrol and add it to your protocol. A lot of people have brain fog, especially people that are liberal and drinking fluorinated water. Make sure you don't drink fluorinated water. Make sure that you filter your water. So get like a zero filter water or a Brita filter. I have a 5 filtration system. Some people use osmotic filtration, whatever. But get a good filtration system. Get the fluoride out of your water. It makes you stupid. Literally, fluoride makes you stupid. All right? In addition, a lot of people have brain fog. So go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Clarity Factor. This Clarity Factor, I take twice a day. Some people just take it once a day. It'll allow you to focus on your work or focus on your school work. It will, even if you aren't working anymore and you're retired, it'll allow you to concentrate better. It'll get rid of that brain fog. So you're getting those neurons firing. And when your neurons are firing, it maintains its neuroplasticity, and a positive growth of those neurons. So it'll slow down the neural aging. All right? When the neurons stop firing so well, then the dendritic connections between neurons start to recede and you aren't thinking as fast. Your memory goes down. It's harder to find words or whatever. Take the Clarity Factor every day as part of an anti-aging protocol. I think it's important to interject and say that it's not just proper supplementation, it's proper diet, it's also proper exercise. Don't over-exercise, especially in this post-2020 era, all right? Many people have some sort of effect on their heart. So don't, start doing a little bit more less intensive type stuff. Start doing more less intensive. And don't over stress the heart, right? A lot of walking. Walking does great. You can jog a little bit, but don't do a marathon. Don't do triathlons. Stay away from high intensity sports for about 5 years. From when, if you were inoculated or if you contracted the natural infection, you need a 5 year to let the heart heal, low intensity. All right. Balancing. You want to keep activating your cerebellum, so you do some balancing exercises, a little bit of stretching. All right, will also help to help with your muscles and your tendons, your coordination. So do that. Train your brain. Read, write, talk to people, and tap into the spiritual. There's some sort of meditation or praying that will holistically, with proper diet, exercise, mental challenging, balancing, a little bit of stretching. All these things are really important to have good, proper health maintenance. All right. So it's not just taking supplements. It's not just filtering in water. You got to look at this in a holistic approach. And when you do that, you're going to slow down the aging process. You're going to get healthier. Your immune system will be more robust. And you're going to have more vitality. I guarantee you, you follow my advice and the things that I say to get for the supplements, it's a lot better than anything that Dr. McCall is saying. All right. My recommendations are the Ferrari of getting your health back, maintaining your health, slowing down the aging process. All right. It works. It works, but you've got to be diligent and follow it and be consistent to get the compound effects. Nothing's a silver bullet where it's going to be a cure-all for everything. That doesn't exist. But you can mitigate the aging process, and you can improve your immune system. And just follow what I just said. There's just a lot of this is just holistic common sense, but a lot of people don't do it.
Sanctuary cities across the United States. Something to do. But this crisis is about to come to an end in just 6 months.
So this tells us everything we need to know about why the asylum crisis is the way it is. And it also reveals that this entire crisis isn't about the people that are coming to New York City. It's about politics. And if New York City is really a sanctuary for immigrants, why are the immigrants who are here being treated the way that they are, getting kicked out of their shelters? At the same time, we've got so much activism going on here right now that it is starting to conflict with itself. On the one hand, we don't have enough shelters. On the other hand, we need more shelters. There's also endless debate on how long people should be able to stay in them. Some people want it to be forever. Other people think that the term limits we have are good because those limits help the city free up shelter space for new arrivals who come every single week. And now you've got a situation where the mayor's extremely frustrated. He's implementing the laws that were voted for, and he's doing it with the limited amount of resources that the city has, yet he's getting all the blame for how these things work out. But the mayor's response to the Texas governor's threats is one many New Yorkers will probably appreciate. But before we look at how New York City is going to respond to this latest round of threats, it's important to understand the Texas governor says he's going to continue his bus program as long as the country's border remains in its current state. That being said, the mayor has a few tools at his disposal to fight back against another bus program, and the mayor's not taking the Texas governor's criticism of him or his city lying down. First, the mayor's office has called the governor of Texas a coward for offloading his problems to somebody else to deal with, and the mayor's office even went so far as to mention that crime in Texas...
Wait a minute, the liberals, like Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, they have this open border bullshit system. And Biden, they wanted to throw the problem on the red states, the border states. And now they're whining that, that some of these governors have some balls, and they're saying, listen here, liberal, you want this policy, you pay for it.
exponentially since he started. Believe who you want to on statistics like that. But the Adams administration said it's left to pick up the pieces of broken policies that use people as political pawns, while maintaining that the city's provided care for over 200,000 people since this crisis began in New York. But words aren't the only tool the mayor plans to use in the face of this.
In January, Mayor Eric Adams announced that he is suing 17 bus companies for their role in busing tens of thousands of migrants from Texas to New York City since the spring of 2022.
Today's lawsuit.
So last year, when Texas started busing asylum seekers here to New York City, there was a massive surge in immigration numbers. The city ended up suing the very bus companies on which those folks were traveling in order to get them to stop. And this has worked because one of the 16 companies involved in that operation says they're not going to do it anymore. And the companies that wish to continue transporting people here face a blockade of some sorts at the actual bus terminal. And they're limited to just dropping off guests at one specific location during specific times with 48 hours advance notice. And what used to effectively be a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week operation is now limited to just a few days a week and just a few hours. But here's where things get interesting. In New York, it is illegal to transport someone here so that they can take advantage of the city's generous right to shelter laws. That's why the city thinks they've got standing to sue. But activists are actually upset that the city shut down the busing program, which was costing the city money caring for folks who may not have come here if they weren't given a free ticket.
The city is seeking more than $700 million from these 17 bus companies to cover the cost of caring and sheltering these migrants. As part of the lawsuit, the city was also requiring these companies to post a monetary bond to start covering the costs.
$700 million in damages related to care. That's crazy. But before we go over why activists are upset the mayor has been battling this program, trying to shut it down, when the program was still active, 4,000 people a week were arriving in the city. Those numbers are down considerably to around 1,300 people a week. But if Texas does start sending more people here, that could change. There are more ways to get into New York City than a bus that goes straight from Texas to here. You can take a bus part of the way and then take another bus part of the way. Plus there's roads, bridges, trains, planes, and it may be impossible for the mayor to completely close off the city's border to just one person from one certain part of the world. Plus, there are people who would say that that's illegal. But wait till you hear why activists are so upset with the mayor for shutting down the initial Texas bus program in the first place.
Baloo says he is against a lawsuit suing these bus companies and adds it has made their job more difficult when trying to find new arrivals.
It's a little bit more difficult for us to get a grasp as to where they're going to exit. So we're seeing.
You know, that almost makes it seem like the number of people coming here remains unchanged because New York is such an attractive destination with so many things that help asylum seekers that people would make the journey here no matter what. And even though it might look like the mayor's plan to block buses coming in from Texas is a win from a political standpoint, in practice it means that people who are coming here just have a harder time doing something that they already had planned to do when they left wherever it is they're from. And whereas in the past you had people arriving at one specific part of this very specific location, now folks arrive everywhere. Penn Station, Grand Central, various terminals here, roads, planes, trains, and the limited resources that humanitarians have to help are now being spread even thinner. But now, since the city's going to war with the companies bringing people here, there's no standard procedure for dropping people off, and humanitarians have no way of knowing where vulnerable folks are going to arrive. And they're now running around the city at all hours of the day trying to track down one person from here or one person arriving here. It's a big mess. And the most insane thing about this is no matter how people end up arriving, the city's never had any plans to disqualify someone for applying for shelter. So here we have the city on the one hand winning points politically, but also hurting the people it's supposed to care for by making their lives tougher. And if Texas does decide to resume sending larger and larger amounts of people to the city, and if the city continues resisting those efforts by just making the journey tougher while still offering to help people, the city is just going to end up wasting the little resources that it says it has. And speaking of resources, the city's shelters are now so full, you have lines of people waiting to see if the shelter system will re-accept them for a place to stay because they've started kicking people out. Can you believe that? Shelter evictions in a sanctuary city? While at the same time, you've got activists insisting that the people who have been evicted should be allowed to stay forever and that we may have too many shelters in the first place, which makes this the most confusing development of this story so far.
I have an idea for a meal prep food truck.
So behind me, this is the line to get into the re-ticketing facility. At this place, everyone who's been evicted from a shelter can get a plane ticket, bus ticket, or help with a ride-sharing app to the destination of their choosing. But the reason there's a line here is because shelter evictions have started, which has activists fuming, yet other activists are upset that we have as many shelters as we do for some reason.
The city says they have to place these shelter limits because they don't have room for everyone. Just last week, the city received more than 1,300 new arrivals.
That's not going away.
So everyone watching this knows the evictions are a bad idea because they lead to what you see back here. But New York City's laws stipulate that everyone gets a place to stay on a temporary basis, even if the shelter system is full. And when you offer a limited number of resources to an unlimited number of people, this is the predictable result. In fact, the shelter system is now tasked with doing something it was never designed to do. The way that the shelter should be operating is they should allow people to move in and not force them to move out until their time has come to its logical conclusion, meaning that they've gotten the help they need to enter society. Yet the shelter systems here have people evicted after 30 days.
That would never work, Cash Jordan. The reason why? Because there's not enough money. Because these things, these processing of these immigrants take years.
Minimum of 6 months. And obviously this is something that people should be and are upset about, but it's bringing up a question. Is this the city's only option? They've got a lot of resources, but are they doing what they have to do to abide by the law, or is this deliberately cruel?
We're still dealing with this every day.
As the migrant crisis continues, New York City leaders will not stop evictions for adult migrants who've reached the 30 or 60-day shelter limit. Critics have called the policy.
So here's the thing. The mayor's office spent 6 months with local activist groups in court going over how exactly to implement right to shelter when these conditions persist. And putting up a no vacancy sign on the city's shelters and turning people away wasn't an idea that was being considered. Yet had the city gone and done that, all of the folks that you see here would have had enough time in the shelter to get the requisite assistance. Yet sadly, many of the folks getting let go that are now here to plead their case for a shelter extension are in no better position than they were when they got here. And that's not what a homeless shelter is supposed to do. People are supposed to be better when they leave, not worse off. In fact, part of the problem is that people that are in line, they've filed their asylum paperwork, they've gotten everything set up with a caseworker, but since federal work authorization can take 6 to 8 months, they're now waiting for that to happen. They can't provide themselves on their own. And the second problem we've got here is that since right to shelter applies to the entire world, a potentially unlimited number of people, critics say this means nothing can ever be done to address capacity issues at the city's limited shelter resources, which is why we've got revolving evictions, which help nobody. And what's upsetting is that after 6 months of negotiations, this is the compromise solution that we got. Right to shelter remains the law of the land, yet it only applies on a temporary basis, and this is the result. Yet now, many of the very same people who are in favor of the creation of this very same system are now activating against it, calling the mayor's actions cruel and inhumane, saying he's doing something wrong when this is what was agreed on and a judge is overseeing it.
People said it's inhumane to put people out during the wintertime. So now they say it's inhumane to do it in the summertime. It's inhumane to do it in the springtime. It's inhumane to do it in the fall time. It's always inhumane to have to not be able to house 198,000 people.
Unfortunately, this is what we see every single time the city does anything. If they need to build a shelter somewhere, there are always protests. There is always local pushback. And then if people can't stay in the shelter, there's pushback. If new people come and they don't have a place to stay, there's pushback. And as you'll soon see, even with lines of people on the street, there are still some people.
This is the problem with the liberals.
Go away entirely.
This is the problem with the liberals. They don't understand that their policy has constraints. And that when you break the constraint, don't be surprised that there's a failed policy. I literally heard from one of the individuals that will be that's actually on the reparations committee for Hochul, the governor of New York, the reparations committee. I heard her say she doesn't care on how much it costs or how the funding is. They don't realize that reparations is going to be inflationary, and they don't care because they think there's free money everywhere. And this is the problem with the liberal. And the same thing with this Palestinian garb Harvard College student going to Oxford when he does graduate from Harvard, all right? Not realizing that your policies could actually try to promote those policies actually make society worse. Now, it's a little bit harder to see that play out with dealing with this crisis in the Middle East. All right. For example, all right, it's easier to understand that, oh, immigration overflow, lack of funds in the city, then there's a crash of this policy because there's no funds left. All right. It's easier to see with this immigration problem. It's not so easy to see because it's 2 or 3 degrees of separation to a catastrophe. The war that's happening in Europe and the destabilization between Western powers and Russia and the destabilization that's taking place in the Middle East and the destabilization that's taking place between Taiwan, China, and the Pacific Rim players, all right? These are all happening at the same time. Now, you really think that normalizing relations and having statehood for Palestine is going to play really well in a world war? I don't think so. But it's about 2 degrees of separation to fully understand that pernicious policy that he has. Because you got to remember, what is the end game? The end game in the Middle East is a larger border for Israel, the rebuilding of the temple, and then blessing and the Middle East being a major hub of economic activity. But there has to be war and destruction in the process. And he not even realizing it is trying to, him not even realizing it will, if he gets his policies, will actually try to be roadblocks or speed bumps to actually the inevitable. How painful do you want the inevitable? Do you want to be easy or do you want to be bloody? Well, Palestinian statehood is another barrier of trying to get to the end, what was written down in the Bible, and reaching homeostasis. Liberal policies are pernicious, they're inflationary, and they're socially disruptive.
Just create more of this, which is very interesting because recent polling shows that 80% of New Yorkers are in favor of right to shelter. Just not apparently when there is a shelter or a facility in their particular neighborhood. That's always the wrong location for some reason, which reveals a very dark secret underneath all of this supposed compassion that's supposed to be helping people and might not be.
Did you know that AI is set to create 97 million new jobs by 2025? These new age jobs will need skilled professionals to drive AI-backed innovation and lead sustainable business growth. Are you ready to become one of them? Over the decades, AI
implied that the Randall's Island group is like all the other elected officials who want migrants taken care of, just not where they live.
When you see some of the hypocrisy of people who are saying, bring us your tired, your weak, your huddle masters, yearning to be free, but not on my block.
So Mayor Adams starting to sound a lot like the Texas governor in some ways. It seems like he's just abiding by the laws of the land that New Yorkers voted for. And how else is the mayor supposed to house people who come here by the thousands every single month? As we're seeing, there's no great solution for how to do that. And if this is something many New Yorkers have a problem with, why aren't they voting for change? I will explain to you why that is. It's because activism for the sake of activism has taken over much of progressive America, including New York, and that's what you're witnessing here. And unfortunately for many people, including legitimate activists, activism itself is now a fashionable trend going on in America.
Earlier this week, New York City Council member Shahana Hanif reintroduced a bill that would end shelter stay limits. All New Yorkers, no matter when they've arrived, deserve equity, not harm. A public hearing.
So here we have people protesting shelter stay limits, which obviously are a bad idea because they put people back out on the streets before they're ready. But remember, these are the very same people who were rallying just a month or so ago in order to keep the city's right to shelter rules in place at all costs. And what the city's revolving door shelters have done is they've created a situation of bad outcomes no matter how you slice it, which means there's always something to fight against and get angry about. Yet the mayor and other city leaders are starting to figure out that the more they cave to various forms of activism, the more they create other opportunities for activists to get upset because there's no perfect solution to a humanitarian crisis bigger than what the city's able to deal with. And to help make sense of why this is the case, understand that when this crisis first started, unlimited shelter stays were how everything worked. And then what ended up happening is the shelters filled up. So what does the city do? They go out and they build new shelters to house more people. Yet those shelters are cruel and inhumane. And although these shelters might not be perfect, the mayor even went out of his way to mention that he didn't want to use these humanitarian relief centers because they're not the same as an actual standing building, but because right to shelter remains the law of the land. The mayor had no choice but to build those facilities while being accused of having no soul by those who don't seem to understand that the city has limited resources. On top of that, look, every single time the city picks a location for a new shelter, maybe like an abandoned school or something somewhere, there are protests, which means that the same activists who are protesting the tent shelters are also the reason tent shelters are all we can have. And what this means is that the city will perpetually be between a rock and a hard place every time it tries to obey the law. And observers are now suggesting that this type of mass protest against any and all government action, no matter what it is the reason this crisis looks the way that it does, and it's the reason that the people in it aren't being treated the way that they probably should be. But the real problem here is that people aren't just getting kicked out after 30 days and told to go fend for themselves. Since they can't do that, they are still 100% reliant upon the city and upon the state to care for them. And even though to some people it looks like the right decision may have been to temporarily suspend the right to shelter and do the right thing by every single person that was living in a shelter, there would have been protests if that happened because it would have stopped the flow of asylum seekers to the city. But now that asylum seekers can come as often as they want, the city is being protested because it just simply doesn't have the ability to help everyone the way that it knows it should. Which is why some people say we're now watching the idea of protesting and making a difference eclipse reality and consequence, meaning that all of this activism against the mayor's every single move might be making the problem much worse for the very people who are stuck in it and can't get out. Is that what's happening? Is New York turning into a city of activists who protest every single decision, no matter what it is, just because they aren't the ones who made it? Let me know what you think. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next video.
No offense, but if you still think stocks, real estate,
All right. I think that juxtaposition between what was going on with Harvard and the idea of this immigration policy that's failing in New York and how it's causing disruption in terms of finances for New York and being able to absorb all this, and the pernicious activity that's going on with a porous border dovetails really well with what was going on with the liberal agenda over at Harvard. Because they're trying to promote this social change, this everything is going to be kumbaya. And I think that when you look at societies and the arc of their ascent and decline, we're seeing the decline of America. We're seeing the decline of the Roman Empire. Slowly, but our debt servicing on our bonds are too high. Inflation's too high. Opportunities for people, especially getting into the job market when they're young, is diminishing. These social policies, this socialism is hurting America. Now, part of that is because their policies fail, but another part of it, and I mean by fail, it's too much of a burden for the society to be able to hold up. But also, it's their agenda of destroying God, country, and family. When you put all that together, it creates a perfect storm for a declining society. Maybe their heart's in the right place. Sometimes it's not. But the reality of the situation is that people have to work hard, have luck, and move forward in society. There should be safety nets to catch people that are on hard times, but under a very limited timeline. What happens is that people don't want safety nets, they want hammocks. They want a good life, not working too hard. And if you had a policy where it was hard for the immigrant to get to the United States and not rubber stamp through the immigration policy, then you would have less of these individuals coming through. But because we allow for a porous border, we have this problem. All right. Remember what I was saying about self-centeredness with the Harvard College, where activities for the week, for the 2024 commencement, were curtailed because of safety reasons. And that the disruption during the conferment of the degrees for the school, all the schools except the Harvard College, created that created a disruption where people couldn't enjoy that particular only once in a lifetime moment. So we have to kind of like look back and it's like say, well, wait a minute here, liberal. Your policies are pernicious. Your policies are disruptive and will end up being the downfall of the country. I want to, there's a, I want to just, let's drop into democracy now. It was yesterday and the day before, there were this missile attack that killed 45 people. How many were civilians, I don't know. And then there was some firefight between the Egyptian military and the IDF. So I don't know all the details about that, but let's just listen to what's going on in this whole context of China doing military operations around Taiwan. The last time they did that was when Nancy Pelosi decided to visit Taiwan. So there's this bigger arc that liberals need to pay attention. We are on the purposes of World War III. The probabilities of doing the wrong thing can lead to a huge catastrophe. All right. And having a no war policy as a blanket policy for everything is not going to work. That will lead to World War III. But having a always war policy is also going to lead to World War III. You have to kind of know when to do it, when not to. And that's why I'm against what's going on in Ukraine, supporting Ukraine, right? Because of this encroachment of NATO. And we should have been allying with Russia so we could have a two-front war with China. And Russia could also help with stabilizing the Middle East. Now, with Israel and Hezbollah, Hamas, and Iran, I think that we have to support that war to eventually reach homeostasis. Now, that homeostasis in that region will lead to economic prosperity and growth and blessing to the world. But it's going to take a lot of effort. Hezbollah, Hamas, and Iran's military apparatus needs to be knocked out. I am surprised that it's taking so damn long for Israel to get this thing done. And it's frustrating. We also have to support Taiwan and not allow for the island chains to be controlled by China. So there was, out of the 3 theaters, 2 of them are worth fighting for. The European theater, I'm not so sure about. And this pernicious thought process that are coming from this individual and others from Harvard College and other colleges. is very similar to some of the pernicious activity of liberal policies with immigration. The thing is, oh, it's okay, just let it happen. We'll just keep on funding it, right? And but eventually the reality sets in, and these cities can't afford it anymore. Well, oh, just prevent Israel from rooting out Hezbollah and Hamas and the military apparatus of Iran. Prevent them from doing that. Only to kick the can down the road, where there's going to be more people dying in Israel and more people dying in Gaza and in the West Bank. Because each one of these ceasefires ends up leading to a more death and destruction when the violence ramps up again. The only way to stop it is to destroy Hamas, Hezbollah, and Iran. And to go to that homeostasis where there's a larger Israel, there is a state for the Palestinians, which would be Gaza, not the West Bank. And that you're going back to biblical times. Now, the fighting between Israel and Egypt is interesting because I said that the Sinai Peninsula is going to be part of the new borders for Israel. And that would mean taking away from Egypt. I also am predicting that parts of Jordan, Syria, and Lebanon are going to be going to Israel. So that means that there's going to be some sort of multiple country war kind of thing that happens. Now, it's very possible that these liberal policies have the international community put pressure on Israel to stop, only for it to ramp up 5 years later. More death and destruction, may even go unconventional, either in chemical, biological, or radiological, or some other means, where it's not just Gaza and Israel or Hezbollah and Israel, but all the countries in that area. This is where it seems on the surface that you're trying to do the right thing, but there's a pernicious activity that leads to a catastrophic event. Same thing, you're just trying to help people that are immigrating to the United States, even though I don't believe in illegal immigration at all. Illegal immigration is illegal and needs to be punished. That perniciousness of trying to have an open border leads to a financial catastrophe for these safe havens. Pernicious policies that snowball and create a much more chaotic situation. Instead of just rooting out the cancer now, yes, it's painful, yes, it's destructive, but it's going to be a lot better than doing it 5 years from now. And this is the problem that he doesn't understand. Thinks that we're just going to cease fire and everything's going to reach homeostasis. Same thing with policies with the energy, use of fossil fuels. Just imagine, just look at what's happening with the EV market. All right, no one wants to buy the EVs because they're too costly. They catch on fire, and they don't have a robustness. They're like an iPad, all right, on wheels, where the battery is so expensive, it only will last about 6 years, 6 to 8 years. So there's not a durability for the EV, let alone being able to charge it. There's no centers to charge it. And if you do find a center to charge it, it takes forever to charge. And they want you to move all the way away from fossil fuel and to other energy sources. Imagine how disruptive that will be for society. Because the modern society that we live in is a carbon-based society, petrochemical society. And we don't have a real good means of totally shutting that off and still having a modern society. Liberal policy has perniciousness that leads to catastrophe and a chaotic event. That's what that guy represents. Okay, let's see what General King has to say.
All right, folks, if you are watching this today, then I have an offer you are going to love. You are looking at the
Welcome back. Well, the White House issuing a warning to Israel after an airstrike in Rafah killed 2 senior Hamas leaders, as well as dozens of civilians over the weekend. A spokesman for the U.S. National Security Council says this, quote, Israel has a right to go after Hamas, but as we've been clear, Israel must take every precaution possible to protect civilians. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu called the incident a, quote, tragic mistake. Israeli and Egyptian officials also holding urgent talks yesterday after Egyptian service members and Israeli Defense Forces exchanged gunfire at the Rafah border crossing, leaving 1 Egyptian officer dead. Joining me now is Fox News senior strategic analyst and chairman of the Institute for the Study of War, General Jack Keane. General, great to see you. Thanks so much for being here this morning. Your reaction to the Rafah incident?
Well, the 2 incidents certainly are significant. One, obviously, the tragic death of 45 civilians and those casualties may grow. So our audience understands it was targeting 2 Hamas leaders who lead activities in the West Bank, interesting enough. And obviously, this is a hideout for them. And they targeted those 2 leaders. And right next to that target were displaced civilians living in temporary shelters or tents. And we've all seen photos of what that's like. They're literally living on top of one another. And as a result of the strike, a fire broke out and it spread very rapidly through that temporary tent city. Obviously, I don't think Netanyahu or his administration needs any warnings from the United States.
Exactly.
I mean, frankly, they believe this is a tragic incident, and they've admitted that, and they're trying to get to the bottom of, why this took place, who authorized the target, how much information did they know about the temporary city that was right next to the target, and how do they prevent something like this from happening again. This is what a democracy does, who is operating with strong values to protect its own people and to protect, obviously, civilians on the battlefield as much as possible. Admit that a mistake has been made and try to figure out how to prevent it from happening again. And that's what's going on here.
Yeah, I mean, General, I'm really glad you said that, because that was my instinct immediately when I read this story. I mean, the fog of war is ugly. But it is a reality. And, to hear the White House say something like, oh, they're allowed to go into Rafah, but they have to do everything they can to protect civilians. I mean, no kidding. Did President Biden know that when he did his boxed withdrawal from Afghanistan, where we lost 13 servicemen? And all of a sudden, it's all about Israel making these mistakes. Now the Wall Street Journal is reporting that the Biden administration is, quote, pressing European allies to back off plans to rebuke Iran because of the advances that Iran has made in its nuclear program, even as it expands its stockpile of near weapons-grade fissile material to a record level. I mean, General, I don't understand what's going on here. A U.S. official denying this claim, telling the Wall Street Journal that Washington is, quote, tightly coordinated with Europe ahead of the IAEA board meeting next month, and that, quote, any speculation about decisions is premature. But why are we hearing this anyway? That the U.S. would be stopping European allies from confronting Iran on what it's doing in its nuclear program.
Well, what's happened here, certainly after Iran's massive airstrike against Israel, which obviously we recorded very well here, and the U.S.-led coalition that helped Israel to stop that strike from being successful, the G7 and the United States and European like-minded democracies have come together. And they want to impose sanctions on Iran as a result of that strike, which in their minds is unprovoked. And certainly that's a step in the right direction. We know full well that Iran is selling this oil to China, and it's got flush with money despite enormous inflation problems and currency value problems they have inside their country. There is a possibility that we can get Iran back on its heels where it was in the previous administration. And we've been saying for some time that Biden should change the strategy as opposed to trying to appease the Iranians and make this nuclear deal. It staggers me that almost 4 years into this administration, we're still trying to make something of a diplomatic effort with the Iranians, where obviously they have thrown diplomacy aside, and they're about one thing and one thing only. That's aggression, drive the United States out of the region, destroy the state of Israel. They've operationalized all of their proxies to do it. Wake up and see it for what it really is here.
Yeah.
There is no diplomacy effort that's going to succeed with the Iranians. And now we got the Europeans have awoken to this reality themselves, and they want to press forward, something we believe they should have done a long time ago, but they're here. And now the Biden
This is
administration.
the point that I'm making. This guy from Harvard College most likely will, quote, graduate next year. All right. Is supporting activities that will allow for things like this to take hold. You kick the can down the road and it goes nuclear, unconventional, biologic, chemical. Was it worth it to try to say that instead of 30,000 people dead on the Palestinian side, it potentially could be 200,000 or 300,000? This can get out of hand really quick because we have failed policy. Liberals are fucking up this world. Trust me on this. Trust me on this. A lot of people are saying all the neocons. Trust me, more destruction and the fracturing of our society and the decline of our empire is because of liberal policy. It's a liberal policy from the domestic for domestic policy and international policy, but also the sociological policies that they promote. The destruction of family, the destruction of God, and the destruction of country.
Is trying to tamp that down in the hope that some possibility and opening would take place. There had been clandestine meetings with the Iranians by members of the administration that have been going on at least a few weeks ago. I don't know if they're still continuing to this day, but that sends a huge signal to what is really happening here. Here we have Iran seeking domination and control of the Middle East. It's obviously have inflamed its proxies to put as much pressure on Israel, and that is an existential threat and an attempt to destroy the state of Israel. And
even if you don't want to support Israel, you better start waking up, because if the Middle East is governed by a country like Iran with nukes, a theocracy with nukes, you got a problem. And that's going to hurt the hegemonic power of the United States. Now, most of these liberals don't care about the hegemonic power of the United States, but you better pay attention to the fall of the Roman Empire. If you don't hold the republic, then you're going to fall with it. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, because this is PNN and I have to do commercial. Please get my C60. I have it in an MCT coconut oil, extra virgin olive oil, and avocado oil in a 2 ounce. It's the 2 ounce bottle, 4 ounce or 8 ounce configuration. If you get the 2 ounce, take a full dropper. If you get the 4 or 8 ounce configuration, take a teaspoon of it a day. You do that every day, you're going to soak up those free radicals and bring down that stress on the cell and boost up your mitochondrial health. You'll get more ATP and you'll have better cellular and tissue health. In addition, it is time to go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get a couple tubes of the toothpaste. Get 2 or 4 or 5, 6 tubes of toothpaste. All right. This is a structural nano silver toothpaste. It has no fluoride in it, no fluoride. All right. It will whiten your teeth, freshen your breath, neutralize pathogens, reduce gum irritation, and improve your cardiovascular health and your valvular health. Why? Because with proper oral hygiene and neutralizing those pathogens, you're going to reduce cardiovascular disease and valvular disease. All right. This is the best toothpaste that you can buy. There's no toothpaste out there that you can buy that is better. So go to my store, help support my work, help support your family's oral hygiene, and don't be a crazy freaking liberal. Go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the toothpaste from my store, structural nail silver, a couple bars of it. In addition, as you notice, I was sneezing earlier. There's allergens in the air with the pollen and the rainfall and all this. So we're in the season where there's allergies. You'll probably notice that people that you know have more allergies this year compared to a few years ago. Go to my store and get the drops and the lozenges. All right, I have it in blueberry drops in 100 count. I also have in 100 count the honey and lemon drops. They're smaller, they taste great. All right, they'll help to neutralize the pathogens, soothe your throat, and reduce that irritation from the allergen. Elderberry zinc, which is a popular item. This is the lozenges are a little bit bigger than the drops. So go to my store and get a couple bags of this for your household. Trust me, because allergies this year are on the rise. So go to my store to mitigate that reaction. It's what is called a hypersensitivity type 1 reaction. So to stop that, go get the lozenges. The moment that you start feeling a little tickle in the throat, or you're starting to sneeze or whatever, start taking one of these and it'll abate. So please go to the store, get a couple bags of the drops and the lozenges.
Boost the Israelis' willingness. Your child needs these 3 key factors to get into an Ivy League or top 25 university. And it's not having a good.
And reduce the Israelis' willingness to live in a country that's so volatile because of the security situation. That's what this is all about. And see it for what it is.
Well, over and over again, it feels like this administration protects the bad guys. I mean, look, let's just say
they don't care
what it is that we see. I mean, Iran has been threatening the United States, threatening our.
They literally want to destroy America. They're on the take, so they're supporting their own wallet, and they're placating to liberal policies that, in the end, will destroy America. I'm telling you, conservatives need to step up, stop being pacifists, step up and call these liberals out.
Members on the ground, obviously behind all of the attacks on Israel, and yet Europe is not allowed to get involved and say something about the nuclear program to try to pull them back in. Why? Why are we constantly protecting the bad guys, whether it's Iran, China, Russia, or anybody else?
Well, what's happening here is the Biden administration strategically had made up its mind when they took over from Trump. All things Trump were bad. Right. Despite the fact that Iran was back on its heels because of the sanctions, despite the fact that progress had been made in the Abraham Accords, as opposed to riding on the heels of that and making sure that all the sanctions were enforced, because you've got to watch sanctions every month and every week and every day, because there's always slippage taking place. Sure. Button them down and make sure they're working properly should have been the policy, and continue to strengthen the Abraham Accords. No, wipe the slate clean, started over and open negotiations, and now the Middle East is on fire, just like Europe is on fire, because Russia saw weakness in the United States, particularly after Afghanistan. They're inside Ukraine, and Iran saw weakness in the United States, an appeasement strategy. Oh, that's what we did before in the Obama-Biden administration in the past. We got their number. We understand this. We're going to take advantage of this. There's opportunity here. There's vulnerability on the part of the United States, and we're going to get more aggressive. And that is exactly what we're saying. And here, even now, after the Middle East is on fire, the Biden administration cannot still see the reality of what is taking place strategically by Iran. It's stunning to me that they won't change their policy.
It is stunning, and yet everybody else sees it. Just the way we see very clearly what's happening as a result of this wide open border. We still don't know why thousands and tens of thousands of Chinese nationals are coming into the country via the open border. 30,000 just since October in California alone. And then there's Taiwan, a bipartisan congressional delegation meeting with Taiwan's President Lai yesterday, just days after China launched military drills around Taiwan.
In protest of Lai's inauguration, the delegation led by House Foreign Affairs Committee Chairman Michael McCall vowing to support Taiwan, promising the U.S. was moving forward with weapons deliveries for Taiwan. General, your reaction to this?
You know, I spoke to Chairman McCall just before he left, and he told me his purpose in leading this bipartisan delegation was to make certain that the new administration under President Lai, who obviously intends to continue much of the policies of the previous administration, President Tsai, where he was the vice president. But Chairman McCall wants President Lai to understand fully that the House of Representatives and the committee that he leads in bipartisan support is behind his administration and is going to do two things for them. Number one, see that they can get them all the arms and munitions they need, and also encourage the Department of Defense to increase the training of the Taiwan military. And they want them to know that they have their support, and that's why he's there so early in this administration, just a matter of a week old. I think that's a great move by Chairman McCall in doing this, and it sends a large signal. There's two entities in our government that deal with foreign policy and national security. Obviously, one is the leader, the executive branch, but the other is the Congress of the United States, and they're doing their duty here.
All right. This news is
I can't
funded
stand
by-
that liberal, but I'm going to play her. This is going to be the last video for this series here. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the good night formula. You need 3 cycles of REM sleep per night on average to be able to consolidate with memory, to filter out toxins out of your cells, especially the detoxify the CSF. And this will also help to get that energy refreshness when you wake up, okay? When people don't get 3 cycles of REM sleep, they start to forget, they have a buildup of toxins, and they have less energy in the morning. So go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the good night formula. It has melatonin and tryptophan in it. To help to improve your skin and to help to improve your immune system, take vitamin C every day. All right, this also has magnesium. So take my vitamin C every day. If you're not feeling well, take a double dose of vitamin C. Drink it with water, filtered water, because it's water soluble. Lignans. This is a powder that's going to help to boost up your immune system. Why is this important to take every day? People's immune systems are down. They're weakened. It's important to boost up your immune system, especially post 2020. All right? So go to my store, get the lignans, mix it with food or water. It's a powder. You have a little scooper in here. All right? Take it every day and boost up your immune system. It's for males and females. It will also help to promote hormonal health. So take the lignans every day. In addition, I have partnered up with Rainbow Herbals, and we have these deodorant bars. These deodorant bars are made from the Himalayan essential oils, very high quality bars that are dual purpose. So you use it as a deodorant for males and females. This one's peppermint, lavender, and tea tree. This one is citrus. All right, they're made from essential oils from the Himalayas. Use it as a deodorant every day, for males and females. But because of the ingredients, it will help to slowly detoxify your body. So you're detoxifying your body, and you're using it as a deodorant. It doesn't have any aluminum in it, and it doesn't have any baking soda in it. So please go to the store and get these high quality deodorant bars. Get a few for your household. In addition, I also have the Even Better bar. What do you do with the Even Better bar? It's made from essential oils from the Himalayas. You rub it on your skin if you have a cut, or if you have a minor burn, or an abrasion, or a mosquito bite, all right? Or some sort of bug bite, or if you have a muscle pain. But in addition, you can apply it on your skin and leave it on your skin, right? And you'll notice that your skin will start becoming smoother and shinier, all right? So you can use it as a skincare product also. So it's kind of like a Swiss Army knife for skincare bar, all right? So go to the store and get the even better bar. Very high quality. You'll be impressed. I also have structural nano silver soaps. All right. I have it in charcoal tea tree. This one is lemongrass. I have peppermint, lavender, and the last one is oatmeal spice. Okay, so please go to the store and get the structural nano silver soaps that I have. All right, get a couple bars for your household, very high quality, and it helps support my work.
Careers like you. Please support our work at democracynow.org/give. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Israel's bombing of the tent camp in Rafah that killed over 45 people on Sunday, housing displaced Palestinians in a so-called safe zone, came just 2 days after the.
I thought we heard on Fox that they hit some leaders, Hamas leaders, too.
National Court of Justice ordered Israel to immediately stop its assault on Rafah. This is ICJ presiding judge Nawaf Salam.
The court considers that in conformity with obligations under the Genocide Convention, Israel must immediately hold its military offensive and any other action in the Rafah government which may inflict on the Palestinian group in Gaza conditions of life that could bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part.
Now, first of all, the ICC isn't recognized by all countries. All right. Second, this is another perfect example of liberals kicking the can down the road, and it's only going to get worse. It's a pernicious activity. Even if their heart is in the right place, there's a perniciousness of this that will lead to a catastrophe.
Came in response to an emergency request by South Africa, which has brought a genocide case against Israel at the World Court. Though the order is legally binding, there's no enforcement mechanism. This is Abed Mohammed Alata, a Palestinian man whose brother and other relatives were killed in Israel's latest attacks on Rafah.
The decision of the World Court is a lie. They're still killing their planes 24 hours a day. They are martyrs and killings all the time. They are wounded and injuries, children becoming orphaned, innocent people. They haven't done anything. They were displaced from one place to another, looking for a living.
For more, we're joined at The Hague by Ahmed Aboufou, Senior Legal Research and Advocacy Officer at the Palestinian human rights organization Al-Haq. He was born and raised in Gaza. Welcome back to Democracy Now! It's very important to have you with us today. The ruling of the International Court of Justice came down right after Democracy Now! Aired on Friday. So I'm wondering if you can start off by summarizing the ruling and the significance of it.
Thank you for having me again, Amy. This is a very significant ruling. The court basically ruled that Israel must halt its military offensive on Rafah and any other acts that might endanger the Palestinian people as a group and their rights under the Genocide Convention. But the court also ruled that Israel must keep the Rafah crossing open and must allow all investigative bodies and commission of inquiries mandated by the UN to enter the territory and investigate alleged Genocide Convention violations and crimes and genocidal acts that may have been committed. And the court also ordered Israel to report.
What about Hamas hiding in the civilian population, which is a war crime? In addition, Israel shouldn't back down until they kill Hamas, period. All of them. All of them. So they can never do this again. And then they should move their attention, maybe even in tandem, and completely destroy Hezbollah. But it's the same thing. Hamas attacks Israel, and they want the international community to bail them out and think that they're the victim and not take responsibility for their actions. What they did, what Hamas did on October 7th. They don't want to take responsibility. Didn't we see something similar with the Harvard grad? They want to protest. They want to cause pernicious activity, but they don't want to take responsibility. They think that they should get a pass because they're from Harvard. Well, the Palestinians, the international community, wants to give a pass to Hamas. No, there are ramifications. Israel should hunt them down and kill every single one of the Hamas, Hezbollah, and the military apparatus in Iran. Period. Until it's done, until that happens, this should not end.
To it after 1 month on its compliance with this order. It's worth noting that this is the third provisional measures order. And the first one, the court responded to South Africa's request by accepting some of the measures that South Africa requested. And in the second one, the court also responded to South Africa's request by calling on Israel to ensure that the humanitarian aid will enter the Gaza Strip from land crossings, including the Rafah crossings and other crossings, sending a very important signal to world leaders, especially in the West, that there is no alternative to allowing humanitarian aid by land, not the American PA or any other way, including airdrops. In this provisional measure, as I indicated, we can.
Seems a little fishy when they say you have a starving population, but we don't want it from the port. We want it from the land. Why is that? Is it easier to smuggle items in?
See the evolution of the ports, let's say, analysis of the situation and the gravity and the deterioration of the situation. So it's important also to note that for every provisional measure request, the court has to assess again whether the court can issue such order. So the fact that the court decided in 3 different occasions to issue such order, it means that this situation continued to deteriorate, and the Palestinian people as a group in the Gaza Strip are threatened in whole or in part by Israel's military operation, especially in Rafah.
Ahmed, I wanted to ask you on Monday about the European response to the war in Gaza. On Monday, Spanish Foreign Minister Jose Manuel Alvarez said he's requesting 26 European Union member states to issue official support to the International Court of Justice and to take steps to ensure Israel respects its decisions. Your sense of the impact of how Europe is lining up on this issue?
Well, as some European states, as you indicated, have been saying that this order is binding and Israel must comply with it. Better late than never. These orders have been binding from the first provisional measure order, which some states, in my view, disgracefully try to ignore or label as unhelpful. But we see also that in the West, in Europe in particular, some states are taking different position than that has been taken in relation to the situation in Palestine, including Spain, Ireland, including also recognizing Palestine, but also Belgium, Norway, and many others. So what we're witnessing now is the emergence of a different opinion in the European continent by states who are saying that this ruling must be complied with, including Germany. I think there was a statement by German officials that this order is binding. The question is how the European Union will ensure that Israel complies with this order. As you and your viewers may already know, international law does not have an enforcement mechanism. And such
now think
order
about
is
this. When a country doesn't accept the jurisdiction of ICC or IGC, ICJ, that's it, ICJ, too many acronyms. And when you live long enough, there's too many acronyms. All right, so ICJ, all right, the international community shouldn't be dictating to another nation the jurisdiction if that nation hasn't accepted ICJ. The United States doesn't accept ICJ. There are other nations that don't accept ICJ. Why should the international community or someone within the international community force acceptance of the jurisdiction? That doesn't seem too lawful. They don't have jurisdiction. There shouldn't be. And not only that, not only that, not only that, not only that. It should be the court system within the country that, you know, holds their leaders accountable if the country feels as though they're doing the wrong thing. All right. You know, I don't believe in an uber government. What I mean by uber government, like a one world government. I don't believe that there should be an international government at the legislative, at the presidential, or at the judicial level governing other countries. Because what happens is you're giving away your sovereignty. Now, you can have crimes against humanity type trials, but they can be within the government. They don't have to be at the Hague, right? But, you know, I'll tell you, we have moved towards this one world government too much, and we need to start knocking it down. Think about what the Hague is saying. It's okay to give Hamas some more time to reconstitute. 5 years later, whatever, Iran goes nuclear. Imagine how much crimes against humanity, atrocities would happen when it's a gigantic nuclear fireball.
Utilize it to ensure compliance. So the question is, will the European Union and the individual European states continue, for example, their relations with Israel and business as usual, or will we see sanctions on Israel and other repercussions? Of course, it's long overdue for Western states to impose sanctions in Israel, severe diplomatic relations, stop importing Israeli settlements goods, stop exporting arms to the Israeli apartheid regime. Western states in general are complicit in these crimes, especially the U.S. To be honest, the Palestinian victims who are being shattered apart, especially in Rafah, like we saw in the targeting of tents in a designated safe area, were most probably targeted by American weapons.
I mean, this is key, what happened on Sunday. This was just 2 days after the ICJ ruling, talking about not having an enforcement mechanism. As you said, this was designated as a safe zone. There was so much international outcry as Israel bombed the tent camp and it all went up in flames. Israel said it was because there was an oil tank next to it. But this is the nature of these concentrated population centers. The horrifying video went viral showing a man desperately holding up the charred corpse of a headless child amidst the still blazing flames of the attack. Causing the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu calling it a tragic mistake, and he'll investigate. That's the response when there isn't an enforcement mechanism. You have Rashida Tlaib, the only Palestinian American Congress member this weekend, demanding that President Biden lay out his red line, which he has talked about, but at this point has not seemed to say that Netanyahu has crossed it. Talk about the role, for example, of the UN Security Council and what it would mean if it took up the ICJ's ruling.
No, absolutely. You're making a very important point, Damien. If you allow me just to remind your viewers of the fact that after every order of provisional measures by the ICJ, Israel has, in a way, responded in such barbaric way targeting the Palestinians. Take, for example, the first provisional measures, which the court, in which the court relied on UNRWA statement.
The Palestinians, through Hamas, did one of the largest barbaric acts in that region in modern history on October 7th. And how are they treating those prisoners? How are they treating the hostages? All right, not so well. Some of them are already dead. Like I said, Israel needs to absolutely 100% destroy Hamas, Hezbollah, and the military apparatus of Iran. 100%. Not 98%, not leaving 2%, not leaving 0.5%. Absolutely 100% destroy Hamas. Or what's going to happen is more collateral damage will ensue years later when they kick the can down the road. Now, what's happening is that the Palestinians are looking for legitimacy within the international community and trying to use as a stepping stone the ICJ. The reality of the situation is they don't own the land. They don't. They want to make, they're trying to get legitimacy so when Israel starts taking the land away in Jerusalem and in the West Bank, that they have some sort of international treaty or international consensus that obviously Israel isn't going to agree with, right? Trying to stop it from happening. Yet, the ICJ and the international community that's trying to give legitimacy to the Palestinian, quote, right to the land is antithetical to what was written in the Bible. And this is, like I said, you cannot use Westphalian logic. The international community is trying to use Westphalian logic. The Palestinians are trying to say that they own the land, even though they don't have the birthright to the land. They don't have the birthright to the land. They never had. And then they're trying to, the Palestinians are smart because Esau's not dumb. Esau's soul root is trying to prevent the Temple Mount from being rebuilt and the greater Israel boundaries to revert back to biblical times. For that to happen, the West Bank, Jerusalem, parts of Syria, parts of Jordan, and parts of Lebanon have to come into the fold of Israel. And the Gaza Strip is for the Palestinians. And they're smart. They're trying to slow the process down.
To assess what's going on the ground. And right after that order, Israel accused UNRWA of being involved in the October 7th attack. And several states, including the US, rushed to cut funding or suspend funding from UNRWA without even viewing any evidence of such allegations, parroting whatever Israel is saying, in fact, lying. And then shortly after, as we know, they restored funding because they found out that Israel is lying. After the second order, which was focused on humanitarian aid and on the danger of famine that the court described as sitting in the Gaza Strip, the Israeli apartheid regime, immediately after this order, targeted 7 workers at the World Center kitchen, killing nationals of several Western states, and claimed that it was a mistake, although the targeting was of several vehicles apart from each other. And the reporting showed that such acts could not possibly be a mistake. And after the third order, which is focused on Rafah and the fact that Israel has not provided the court of any convincing arguments or evidence that it has ensured the safe passage of civilians into those designated areas or the basic services needed for the survival of the population who would be moved to that area, the court ordered that Israel must halt its operation. Israel's response was to target civilians in a safe, allegedly designated safe area, and then claimed once again it's a mistake. So I think at this stage, one must not be fooled enough to entertain Israel's lies. Israel is lying while we speak. Amy, just now I received the news that Israel has targeted another gathering.
Supposedly, the body count in Gaza is lower than what the Palestinians were saying. They were lying to the public. There are more lies that are coming from the soul root of Esau than the soul root of Jacob. And the Palestinians do not want to lose the West Bank. But the thing is it's already been written what's going to happen. It's been written for thousands of years. And it's all playing out. And it doesn't matter what the international community wants or thinks. Because it's not in their hands. All these people, they're thinking that they have control. It's not. It's this. Now the question is, what we do have power, right? Is it going to be bloody or is it going to be peaceful? It's looking like it's going to be the bloody path because we always pick the bloody path. But, international lawyer. Lovely. Yeah. The best and the brightest.
In the Mawasi area, with the Rafah government, where Israel also designated it as a safe area. The primary reporting indicates that over 20 persons have been torn apart by this bombing. The primary reporting I received is horrific, like that of the targeting on tents that you just mentioned, and the horrific images that we've seen. So I think any allegation that Israel is doing this by mistake is just ridiculous. And at this stage, entertaining such allegations is just in service of Israel's monstrous and barbaric attacks against civilians. Let me also remind you, Amy, of the targeting of Al Ahli Hospital, when Israel claimed that it wasn't an Israeli rocket. And then after that, we had several investigations, including from Western media outlets, showing that it is, in fact, an Israeli targeting. So what Israel is doing, and what Israel was doing since targeting Al Ahli Hospital is just sensing the pulse, how the international community will react to targeting civilians in a hospital. And unfortunately, the international community has not lived up to the responsibility.
One time did this international lawyer say that Hamas is embedded in the population and using facilities like hospitals as a safe zone to either prevent Israel from coming in, or if Israel does come in and attack, that in the international community, it'll look like it's an atrocity and a war crime. This is the sole root of Esau. The only way to deal with it is to kill him, is to kill Hamas, cut it from the people. Then you rebuild, you give them opportunity to have a thriving society. But it's going to be mean reverting back to biblical Israel land. And that means the West Bank is not part of the Palestinian cause. That also means taking down the Dome of the Rock. They're not going to like that. But that's what has been written for thousands of years.
Has allowed such monstrous acts, and then it continued. We saw how many hospitals have been targeted based on this lies, and this is a deliberate act to me because it's with a genocidal mentality.
What about Hamas embedding themselves? What about the hospitals that are built on top of tunnel systems that Hamas is using? What about that? Huh? What about using the NGO funds to actually build the tunnel systems and the hospital? Now, who's the nefarious one?
Intent to destroy any safe spot needed for or essential to the survival of the civilian population, and hospitals would be on top of that list.
Now, here's the problem. Here's the problem with Netanyahu versus how Bush handled the war in the Middle East post 9/11. All right, Bush basically said this, and it was very smart, even though a lot of people thought that Bush was dumb. Very smart idea. We're going to go after the terrorists, and if you are harboring a terrorist, you are a terrorist. Netanyahu needs to basically say, if you're harboring Hamas, then you are Hamas. We're going after Hamas. If you're not Hamas, get the fuck out of the way. But we're going to kill them all. We're going to kill them all. That's what he should say. But Benjamin Netanyahu isn't taking a page out of Bush's playbook. If you are harboring a terrorist, if you're harboring Hamas, you are Hamas.
A little about your personal story. You're a Palestinian Dutch international lawyer. You dedicated your life to defending human rights, but you were born and raised in Gaza and survived several Israeli assaults in Gaza. What is the situation with your own family there in Gaza today?
You know,
Wait, hold on. See, industrial amnesia? What about the rocket attacks that starts the new cycle of violence between the Palestinians and the Israelis? Almost always, if not always, it started with the rocket launches that come out of Gaza. But the way he spun it, it's as if, yeah, the Israelis one day decided to go and invade Gaza. It doesn't work that way. If you don't believe me, roll back to these world events like in 2007, 2008, 2009, 2014, 2016, right? And then understand the full arc of this. But if you really want to go back all the way to the genesis of this problem, all right, it's the battle of the will between the two twins and the birthright. And the birthright went to Jacob. Did not go to Esau.
It's a matter that is close to my heart. It's personal in many ways. Since the beginning of this genocide, as I mentioned previously on the show, I lost quite a big number of my family, over 18 members from both sides of the family, including my eldest uncle and many others. My family, part of my family was impacted in those things where they were targeted. We were lucky enough that only a few weeks ago I managed to get part of them out of the Gaza Strip thanks to a funding campaign I launched, and I managed to get part of them to Egypt, but the rest of my family remains in Gaza. And now, after Israel invaded the Palestinian side of the Rafah crossing, Palestinians don't have a chance either of leaving the Gaza Strip or even receiving the much-needed humanitarian aid or medical teams that are much needed to enter the Gaza Strip. So the situation is horrific on every Palestinian. I wouldn't say that our Our suffering is the only thing. Palestinians across the occupied Gaza Strip have lost many loved ones. Gaza has been destroyed. Everything I know in Gaza has been destroyed. From my kindergarten to my school to my university, Al-Azhar University, and many other places, which I have so many memories of friends, family, and loved ones, and have been destroyed. This is a genocide. This is about the erasure of the Palestinian people in the Gaza Strip and as a whole. And this is the essence of Zionism as a secular colonial ideology that is premised on the elimination of the indigenous Palestinians to replace them in their land, supported by Western complicity in such atrocity crimes.
Colonialism. I want to thank you for being with us, and also condolences on the loss of
colonialism came right way after the biblical wars that were taking place and the consolidation of Israel through the wars of King David and the boundaries that were written down in the Torah of what Israel would be. That's the birthright of Jacob. Now, fast forward the destruction of the first temple and destruction of the second temple and the diaspora and all this. But the covenant isn't nullified. It's not nullified by international policy. It's not nullified by the ICJ. It's not nullified by the UN. It's not nullified by the Palestinians. It's not nullified by Americans. It's not nullified by the UK. It's not nullified by Iran or Saudi Arabia or anyone else. It is everlasting. And we're living during a time period where we're building up the foundation for this new reboot of the temple. It most likely will not happen in our lifetime, but we're laying the foundation for it. In the end, the Palestinians are going to lose Jerusalem, the Dome of the Rock, the West Bank. The Egyptians are going to lose the Sinai Peninsula. The Jordanians are going to lose some of the land on the east side of the river. And pieces of Lebanon and Syria are going to be with Israel. That's how this is all going to play out. Now, you want to call that colonialism, or you want to call it actually what was written down thousands of years before colonialism on what the covenant is.
80 members of your family. Ahmed is senior legal research and advocacy officer of the Palestinian Human Rights Organization.
Where's an Israeli representative?
And just to be exact in my quoting of the Michigan Democratic Congress member Rashida Tlaib, the only Palestinian American in Congress, she posted on social media, quote, "The whole world is taking action to stop the genocide of Palestinians, including the International Court of Justice. Where is President Biden's red line?" she asked. Democracy Now! Is funded by
Whatever. This is my transmission. I try to dovetail to show how, pernicious activity can lead to catastrophic events, even though you think you're trying to do the right thing. The ICJ is not recognized by many countries. You have liberals pushing an agenda, and many of them don't realize the chaos that will ensue. That is antithetical to peace and prosperity. And you have liberal policies happening in the United States with this porous border that's bankrupting cities. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the health supplements and follow this holistic approach that I've mentioned on how to slow down aging and boost up your immune system. You're going to need this because, things are happening, especially with the cow flu and the bird flu and, whatever flu. And, you need to, boost up your immune system. All right. Get healthy. Watch what you eat. Pay attention to what I'm saying in a holistic approach, and go to the store and get the health supplements that I've been mentioning throughout this broadcast. Thank you for listening, and have a nice day. And please share this link.